should be live.
Awesome. Hey everybody. Welcome to Meet the Maker. We try to do this about once a month, but this is a time where we all get together at West 3D and invite our community members to meet new makers that you've maybe seen in the community, whether they have projects that you're following that you love, or in this case, they're people you've probably seen when you're asking, what type of 3D printer I should get, what are the common mistakes. Somebody that does just a really great job explaining mostly 3D printing to people in the community. We have Michael Laws here, who's of Teaching Tech. Thank you for being here. And
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invitation.
yeah, no, I'm super happy that you're here. We ask at the end of this who would be really cool to bring on. And I think we've had a couple people say that you'd be really cool to have. So hopefully some people here have some questions. Um, for those who do not know, we host this again about once a month. And yeah, we take your feedback and your suggestions as far as who we bring on. So Michael, before we start with asking questions and all of that stuff, I am going to skip the introductions. Alan and Aaron, I feel like if they've done this, they know. But Alan is our media manager. Aaron, what's the official title?
Additive manufacturing product specialist.
Yes, that. He is
I
that.
do things.
He does things. And I'm Daniel, and that is the West 3D crew. Michael, if you could just briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. My name's Michael Laws. I'm from Australia, a couple of hours west of Sydney. I was a full-time high school and primary school technology and STEM teacher for 11 years. And in the last 2 years, I started up a YouTube channel called Teaching Tech. After 2 years, I went full-time. So I've just finished 5 years full-time now. I mainly cover 3D printing, but also other things like laser cutting, CNC, CAD projects, reviews, guides, all of that type of thing.
Awesome. So I think all of us, or most of the people on the stream, probably have seen you. If they couldn't say it's Teaching Tech or know your name, like they've probably seen you in something if they're really big into 3D printing. But you mentioned that you also cover some other things like CNC and laser. I see you have 3D printers behind you. Do you have any of your own CNC or laser machines?
Yep, I've got like a Chinese CO2 laser in the corner. There's a Carvera desktop
Oh,
CNC
cool.
to my side. Behind the camera is a Lowrider 2, like 3D printed CNC. And then the room beneath us is the Underhouse workshop. I've got a Chinese 6040 CNC down there as well.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Do you make anything outside of the channel that I guess you do for work?
I mean, when I was a teacher, I made all sorts of stuff to
Okay.
use, props or a lot of the time, like STEM-based educational products, whatever, if you were going to run a unit of work around it, are really expensive. So quite often I would end up designing and making my own version of that really cheaply. So for instance, I ran F1 at schools at the two schools I was at, and the track for that was like thousands and thousands, like 6,000 or something like that. So
Wow.
I built one for $500. It was Arduino and slotted together from cheaper components. So yeah, I've always used it a lot.
That's awesome. So what made the transition from being a STEM teacher to doing what you're doing now?
I think teaching's a very demanding job, and I could just tell there was no way I was going to make it to retirement age. I was just getting really fed up. There's elements of teaching that I miss. I miss collaborating with other teachers. I miss just being in the classroom and interacting with kids and guiding them to those light bulb moments. That's really rewarding. But then being a teacher is not necessarily, in terms of percentage of time you put in, about actually teaching in the classroom. That's the thing people don't understand. There's so much admin and side stuff and meetings and just really boring, laborious stuff. And that's the side that I was really fed up with. So for me, when I started teaching tech, I was looking to maybe drop down to 4 days a week. from full-time teaching, just so I would have one day off to clear my mind. And yeah, but the channel kept on growing, so I jumped at the chance to go full-time.
Yeah.
In terms of transitioning, especially when I started the channel, I was making videos about a lot of things that I was teaching and had been teaching for years. So it was a natural transition over. But since I've been doing it full time, it's probably become more and more 3D printing focused and specific, and things that I would never need to use as a teacher in the classroom.
And is that just because you're getting questions from people that around certain machines or certain topics, and you're just kind of that's sort of where they're guiding you?
Yeah, definitely steered by requests from viewers, patrons, projects I might be doing myself, new products that have come out in that time. So just where the market goes for 3D printing, I follow, people suggest, and yeah, it has I guess it takes its own course to some extent.
Cool. Um, you mentioned that, you were originally starting and you were just hoping you could knock down a day from your teaching gig. Um, I imagine, I guess, how have things changed from those first videos that you did at Teaching Tech, where
Mhm.
you were taking a day out of the week and trying to get something done, to when you do it full time? Does the production change? Does that, like, all of the things that are not you actually teaching, does that body of work differ from when you first started?
The big difference of switching to full time was I kind of got my life back, because I was doing both jobs for the first 2 years. So, teaching Monday to Friday, business hours, and then get home, do whatever teaching stuff I needed to do, and then pretty much dinner. Then the kids went to bed, and then I would start on the teaching tech side. And a lot of the time, I'd just be working deep into the night over and over, and like all weekend, both days. I stopped doing a lot of hobbies, things like that. It did really like took over my life, trying to fit in both. So when I went to full time, the YouTube side became what I did Monday to Friday during business hours, and then I got after hours and weekends back. I could start doing hobbies and everything again. So yeah, that was incredible.
It's awesome. Do you have a family if that probably appreciates that?
Yeah, definitely. They were on the verge of being neglected at times, my family, that's for sure. For a couple of years, it was hard, not just on me, but on them as well. So if we had some sort of family event on the weekend, I'd do that. I go to that.
Yeah,
But then either side of that, morning, afternoon, I'd be like, okay, back to the channel. Got to get this done. Got to get this done. It was relentless.
yeah.
So now on the weekends, it's very rare that I'm doing any work. Same with after hours. I managed to fit it in when they're at work and school. So yeah, it's just a million times better.
That's amazing. How long did that grind take to get there?
Well, after the first year, I achieved the goal of being able to drop to 4 days a week teaching, and then probably halfway through the second year, it was pretty clear that the way it was trending and whatever else, I would be able to quit teaching if I wanted. So I put in my notice pretty early in that second year, and it was just a matter of seeing out the time.
That's awesome. Um, do you, I'm always curious for content creators. Um, I mean, looking at your channel, and I'm gonna use like the example. I saw the inkjet, the poly dye, I think
Mhm.
thing you posted a month ago or a few weeks ago. And when I was watching that, I was in my head, I was like, man, like, how long would it have taken somebody to put together that video and do all, because there's a lot of hacking stuff together to get that, it looks like, at least to get that to work.
Sure.
um do you have like projects that are long term that you're like, hey, this is going to take me even a couple months or something to put together the content, versus like videos that you're like, okay, this is going to be done today, kind of deal? Do you have
Yeah.
different things?
That's exactly how it is. So my list has three columns. The first column is things I can do really quickly, and typically I've saved them for emergencies. So if something's really not working out in a video, I can make this in a day or two. Um, and before anyone says, "Oh, they must be low effort ones," sometimes they end up being really popular, which
Yeah.
actually frustrates me a lot, because I could spend a long time on something and people don't really care, and then another time I'll put out a video that makes only 2 days and it's like really popular from nowhere. Like, all right, whatever. And then middle column videos that take roughly a week. And then the last column is long-term things that I just have to chip away on in spare time here and there. And then I'll get it to the point where I'm confident I can finish it off in a week and then just spend that week
Okay.
working on it completely. So to go back to the polydye video, Jacques, the creator of that, with the assistance of his wife, he's been going for 4 years on that.
Wow.
But in terms of, we had a lot of discussion leading up, but in terms of what you saw in the video, most of that happened in about a week and a half
Oh,
for
really?
me.
Wow.
So there was very limited time for that. So he was having leave and wanted time to deal with people ordering it and setting up forums and fixing up documentation and things like that. It was coming up to the end of the year for me before I was taking January off. So it was very compressed between him finishing the latest version of the hardware, sending it to me, and then me make it in time before Christmas and him having his break and all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that video, there was a problem on only my printer where it would lose the XY positioning of the color after 10 mils, and we solved that the day after the video came out.
Hmm.
I did a pinned comment. Hopefully, people weren't too turned off
I didn't see it.
and thought, "Oh, that's not for me." But yeah, that's fixed and it's working perfectly now. So
Interesting.
mm,
That would be Alan, that would be somebody cool, I think, to talk to also. Um, because I remember it's been 5 years, maybe 6 years. I remember that XYZ printing came out with like a fairly low cost, and it was still a couple $1,000s at least. Um, like kind of ink-based printer. I don't think it ever, really some past, the initial release light of day. Maybe they still have it. And I'd be curious to see someone that's doing this as an open source and see sort of what the inspiration and how it differs. Um, this is really cool. I thought that was one of the coolest videos. In fact, I don't get a bunch of times where people reach out to me and say, you have to watch this video. That was one of the times that I had multiple people say, you have to watch this video. That was super cool.
that's one of the best things for me. Like a lot of the time, I'm the messenger, and someone in the community has slaved away for a long time creating something really good like that. And it's like a great privilege that I then get to put it on my platform and showcase it. So I was very pleased that video took off. Like obviously, it's good for me as
Yeah.
a YouTuber, but I was just really pleased that most of the comments were like, "Fantastic work! This is amazing." So you know, Jacques lives in South Africa. He's been
Mm.
slaving away without anyone really seeing it for 4 years. Like I don't think he slept at all during that week. He was just constantly replying to my emails whenever I said them really quick. So he's put his heart and soul into this. So for it to then culminate in so many people seeing it and saying like, well done, bravo, that's yeah, very satisfying for
Yeah,
me too. Very pleased.
I can see that. You again, I was looking, you've got like over 500,000 subscribers, which in the 3D printing space is tremendous, right? It's, I think that's you're certainly one of the higher subscriber count people. So my question is, obviously for someone like Jock, it's a huge deal, right? He's getting a lot more visibility, and you can support that for
Mm.
projects like that that are just, obviously unique or incredible. Do you ever feel sort of any um, pressure, for lack of a better way of saying that, like, or responsibility, that you have when you have so many people watching you to put out content that is either genuine or, you know, choosing the right projects to, or
Mm.
things even to show?
I'm not too worried about showing like my personal projects. Sometimes I'll cover stuff I know won't be popular because I just really want to do it. So, like student design competitions or specific CAD things, whatever else. It's more the pressure or the responsibility, as you say, is more in being honest and being accountable. That's where it comes. And if I'm reviewing a product and it's not going too well, I feel I need to make sure I'm really diligent. If I'm going to slam it, then I need to make sure it's not some silly mistake I've done. I need to be diligent and yeah, be thorough in my research. So I probably have nightmares about putting out a video that's got some sort of technical inaccuracy that I've missed the point and then get flamed in the comments saying, "Oh, you're an idiot. You know, you only had to do this or that." So fortunately, that hasn't happened. But yeah, I live in fear of that
Yeah.
fear of failure mucking up.
Well, and you got, some of the communities are somewhat clicky, right? And so, if you're gonna bash one printer or another, there's gonna be people that are like, I'm sure that gets sensitive. You did one recently, I think it was recently at least, which was one of those like, what are the things to look out for when you buy a 3D printer or something. I think you were taking someone's like old Neptune or something like
Mhm.
that and took it back. I thought that was like pretty well done because you're talking about like, hey, this is the environment that things were.
Mm.
Here are the things I don't like, but without necessarily saying like this is a piece of crap. Don't ever buy, an Elegoo product or something like that. Um, you have when looking at the channel, you have quite a few of those. Do you see that there's just a lot of demand for people that are searching for like what kind of 3D printer to get, things to look out for, top 12. I think you have like, top 12 tools, tips and tricks,
Mm.
that kind of thing.
I think I try to vary it for my own sanity as well. Like I don't want to just do reviews or only technical guides or only projects. So printing compilations, they kind of take a long time, but they're easy to make, if that makes sense. They're not
Hmm.
complicated. Like some videos are hard to make because I'm jumping into something I've never done before, and there's like a massive question mark technically over whether things will go smoothly or not. Other videos like lists of things to print, they're uncomplicated. It's just a matter of finding the time to print everything, film and edit. But there's no fear from myself that it's all going to go wrong and I need to switch to one of those short-term videos that I can do quickly. Um, yeah, I try to mix things up just to keep it entertaining for me as
Yeah.
well. And I watch very little 3D printing in my spare time. Like working from home with this as my full-time job, I consume a lot of YouTube and sport and podcasts and things like that. Just got them going on in the background, but
Hmm.
very, very little of that is 3D printing. So most of the things I see are my patrons on our forum saying, "Hey, check out this," and they'll post up videos from other creators, and then yeah, I get a trickle effect of kind of keeping up to date with new things coming out.
Cool. I We have some questions and I will get to those. I will. Um, but I guess one thing as you're talking about this, do you ever or have you ever gotten sort of burnt out? Because I imagine, you have, lack of a better term, like you've got one sort of project, right? That you or product, that you need to keep getting out, which is like video and content.
Mm.
Has that gotten difficult at times?
I think the first year when I was doing two jobs at once, I was like, it was still early enough to be super enthusiastic, and then the results were coming and the channel was growing really well. That was not too bad. And then the second year really became a grind because I was still teaching 4 days a week. But my F1 in schools team won the Australian final and we were preparing to go to Abu Dhabi for the world final.
Oh, wow.
So even though I was working 80% of a teaching load on paper, that was like a whole beast of its own. There were so many meetings and extra times where we had to go in and work with the kids, just trying to get ready for that. So to then be making the videos on top of that. And then before we went to Abu Dhabi, we were over there, I think it was a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. So I had to make that many weeks worth of videos ahead of time while trying to steer the team to all the final preparations, and that was a nightmare. So
Just
by the time that
overwhelming.
came, yeah, but fortunately it was only a month or so after that that I finished teaching and switched to full time. So there probably still is some hangover from those first couple of years in terms of burnout. um, so right now in January, this is the first time I've had off in 7 years since I've started the channel. So 2 Saturdays ago was the first Saturday in 7 years I didn't have a video coming out, or maybe the early days, maybe it was a Friday or something instead, but I'd always had at least one video a week. So I think, yeah, burnout's always been on the horizon, sometimes worse than others. Other times I feel really fresh and enthusiastic, but yeah, it's always like a shadow there. So it's, yeah, sensible of me finally to actually take some time
Take a
off.
break.
Yeah.
How is January over there? Because you're in Australia, for people that don't know.
January is good. after I did the last video just between Christmas and New Year's, which was the one saying I was going to have a break and whatever
Yeah,
else, like that I could make that video in like 3/4 of the day. So didn't eat into too much of my time with family between Christmas and New Year's. And then after that, that's like the most relaxed I've been in a long time over New
that's awesome.
Year's. And yeah, I guess cricket as a sport is something you guys don't really have in North America,
No.
but um, yeah, so Test match, the highest form of cricket, the matches go for 5 days
Oh
in a row.
wow.
Like it's a big deal, right? So when I
It's
was
like a
younger,
series then?
well, each game is up to 5 days if needed, and then
Oh
it's
shoot.
a
Okay.
5 game series over a couple of months.
They take
So
breaks,
it's like
right? Like they take
um
it's like they do it for like a few hours and they meet again the next day
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
deal.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's in three 2 hour
Just
sessions.
thinking
So
a
yeah.
marathon, people just like dying, like falling over of
I
exhaustion.
was
Sorry.
expecting like a 5 day long cricket Le Mans or something like that. That would have been crazy.
It's yeah, so when I was younger, this time of year was when I would just sit on the couch and, maybe I'm playing, doing gaming or something, but I've got the cricket on in the background and I'm just completely relaxing. I did that again this year. So it
That's
sounds silly,
awesome.
but that was significant to just, yeah, a sport that I used to follow more closely. Just sit on my butt and just relax and game and watch cricket and, yeah, do stuff for the family without saying, oh, well, I need to find time this week to keep this video going along. So it's been really, really good. Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
relaxed right now, the most relaxed I've been in a long
Hmm.
time. So it's been great.
That's awesome. Somebody asked if you've ever, since you've left teaching, have you ever sort of done like a substitute or anything like that? You know, or any other teaching that you've done in your off time?
I have been in and like schools have invited me to come in and do like a guest talk to their
Oh,
STEM groups.
cool.
I've done that a few times. I ran a competition at my old high school earlier this year for the students. So I used my printable spool, what do they call it? Pusher meter points.
Hmm.
I got a free Prusa Mini and I made that the first prize and had a design competition.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I've done a little bit here and there, but not actually taught.
Cool. That's awesome. And is it something, are you involved with any sort of local teams or anything like that in the area?
Well, my previous school I taught at, they made the world finals again for F1 in schools. So I mentored some of the students for that. I did a video with them and helped them a little bit here and there. And they actually did really well. They finished eighth in the world out of 60 teams or
Oh,
something
wow.
like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and the guy I used to teach, his name was Finn. He was in the video. He was one of, I think, less than 10, got put into the Williams Formula One team academy for like up and coming engineers. So
Wow.
yeah, it was really, really good to see him get his reward and the whole team
That's
because yeah,
amazing.
he's been working his guts out for a long time.
That's amazing.
Hmm.
We had somebody ask, what aspect of the maker ecosystem do you think needs the most investment from the community in the coming years? So you have examples like printers, software, slicers.
I think Slicer is like constantly evolving, which is good. I think multi-material, a lot more people are getting interested in it. It used to be like IDEX or the E3D tool changer,
Mhm.
or maybe something like a palette or a Prusa MMU, but there wasn't
Yeah.
much else out there. But now you've got like the Rage carrot feeder, obviously Bamboo Lab with their AMS, Creality have their version.
Yeah.
So I think a lot more people are getting interested in that, and there's a lot of room for efficiency still with that. Obviously, the Excel is hugely expensive, but on paper at least it uses a lot less filament compared to other systems where they've still got to purge a lot through the single nozzle.
Yeah.
So I think as people become more interested in it, there's a lot of room for growth in just getting it efficient so it's not so wasteful and time consuming to do multi-material and multicolor. You see more and more printers coming out that aren't Cartesian X, Y, Z, whether it's non-planar or if they've got like a rotating head to print without supports, things like that. So I think firmware and slicer wise will probably be a fair bit of development, especially if a company releases something off the shelf. So you're not doing it as a project.
Yeah.
I think in terms of firmware, there was actually a video I had on my list talking about each firmware and what's good about them, but what still needs work. I would say most firmwares, like they all have pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses. but I think that initial setup could be improved for a lot of them. A lot of people hate compiling Marlin. They find that really confusing.
Yeah.
And they say, Clipper's so good, which it is once it's set up, where you just, change your line in the config, save and restart, done, no compiling. But having to use like command line over SSH to set up Clipper in the first place is way too much for some people. So
Yeah.
I think there's probably room for improvement there, some sort of web interface that's doing the SH for you behind the scenes, and you're just presented with something easy to understand.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if the Clipper guys are interested in that, but I could see that lowering the barrier of entry for a lot of people, something like that.
We
Yeah. There's,
recently did one of these with Kevin O'Connor from
Hmm.
Clipper, and there he is definitely interested in finding ways to make it easier to set up and maintain. So hopefully that will
It's good.
be in the near future.
Yeah.
yeah, maybe
I've
definitely.
noticed like on the Magneto X, if you flash new firmware and you need to get your serial ID to put in the printer config, they've got a bit you can add to the URL of the web interface, and it will just return like this is what you need to copy and paste in. So there must be a way for to do it in the browser and have it talk in the back
Yeah.
end. I guess it just needs time and development.
Does your Magneto X work?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Um, but no, on that, I've actually, I don't know, have you set up a rat rig before?
Yep. That's
So,
I don't know if you could say it, but
oh
you can
yeah.
say that half of it. Yep.
So, I don't know if you've the approach that they use for RadOS to install, where basically you log
Mm,
into through Wi-Fi and do the configuration there.
mm.
Um, I haven't seen other people do that, but is that kind of what you're talking about?
I think
Similar?
so. Yeah. When I first set it up, it was the older version, which I think was vCore OS. So mine's still running that. It's massively out of date. I don't do the automatic updates because I don't want to break it. But I know the new version, it covers different hardware, and you kind of say, I've got this hot end, this main board, this many cooling fans, and then it will kind of automatically do the rest.
Yeah,
Yeah, that type of thing is good. Um,
that's cool.
I suppose the only issue is you don't you've got to find the happy middle ground between it being easy for people to use, but you don't want to cut off the advanced people who like doing everything themselves.
Yeah.
So in the early days, I was doing more end of three videos. Like TH3D had their unified firmware that was set up like what we're talking about. So
Mhm.
you've got things set up through the configuration files, and then at the top you just have to uncomment or comment depending on your features, which is like fantastic for so many people. But I was someone who always wanted to set up vanilla Marlin exactly how I wanted it. So I guess it's hard to come up with a solution that keeps both sides happy.
Yeah. Um, that is definitely one of the trends is it seems like, I mean, you deal with more printers and more manufacturers and things. But from our sort of slice of the community, it does seem like there's a sort of coalescence around Clipper from all the manufacturers that are doing their own versions of that. But it seems
Hmm.
like at least all the newer printers, and it was flagships, and now it's not even flagships, are sort of standardizing across that. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I'm reviewing my first Creality printer in a couple of years.
Okay.
Is it K2 Plus or Max? I can't remember the name. And that's running Clipper, but then the interface on the printer is clearly a clone of a Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon. So,
Oh, interesting.
but if you put in the right IP address, you can get fluid web
Mainsail.
interface as
Okay,
if it
yeah.
was, yeah. So it's really weird because then the slicer is like forked from either Bamboo Studio or Orca Slicer, and then yeah, so it's a weird mishmash printer. It really is.
Yeah.
There's so many little quirks and things I'm finding as I explore it more. But yeah, so
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
then SVO8 that also has Clipper out of the box, but then it's not mainstream Clipper, and you can't update it unless you go through and switch over to mainline Clipper. So things like that are frustrating. I know a few companies have really butchered their Clipper installations trying to change things for who
Yeah.
knows what reason. So I would hope as it does become more mainstream, they stick to vanilla Clipper so people can just update and not worry about breaking things.
Yeah. I wonder, it gets back to that conversation of, do you make it so it's super flexible and, you can do whatever you want with it, which would be running mainline Clipper and, give everybody the world, or do you lock it down and maybe use that, but really limit what people could do to,
Mm.
I'm assuming, reduce claims that they have and stuff like that. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So anyway, I am curious because you mentioned the Magneto, and I think it's a really cool printer. My question was no means to be a knock against the Magneto. But I guess what I'm really curious about is that's obviously an interesting printer. You know, it's not, I don't think it's nearly as disruptive as like Bamboo was, just because that obviously changed the industry, and you're getting a bunch of things that look very much like a Bamboo print grade, and they changed everything. Magneto's different, right? Magneto
Yep.
is using a different technology. It's a really amazing machine. I've got two technically, and they are really cool. How do you choose printers, or do the people just send you printers, or is it both? How do you have a
So
Magneto?
I think there's a big misconception that people on YouTube are after free stuff, but I say yes to, I don't know, like less than 5% of what I'm offered. I'm just bombarded constantly with clone 3D printers, clone diode, laser cutters, cheap CNCs, just all sorts of stuff, and a whole bunch of stuff that's got nothing to do with my channel. It's always the same, like, hello, we've seen your channel. It's so professional. You're a great match for our brand. Would you like to review this car stereo product on your channel? Why? Like, why? You clearly have not seen my channel. You've clearly have not read the stuff on the contact page. You just, they're just probably spamming as many channels as they can find. So yeah, I'm super selective. I'm sure a lot of YouTubers are. Otherwise, there's enough offers. You'd just be doing a review every week or two.
Yeah.
So I got a section on my Patreon forum where if some things I'm like, yes, I know I definitely want to cover it. So for instance, that Creality, I haven't covered one of them in a couple of years. And like, I'm interested to see, like, have they improved a lot from the past? Are they still not dotting I's and crossing T's and leaving little bits off the table? And so the user then has to muck around. So personally, I was always going to be a yes for that. Other ones, if I'm not sure, I'll post for my patrons and we'll debate, and they'll say, yes or no. And if they're interested, then I'll say yes. But honestly, like most emails don't go answered because they're just stuff I'm just rubbish.
Yeah.
Like I could be swimming in so much more hardware if I wanted, but it's more of a burden than a boon. Honestly,
Yeah.
like I don't think a channel needs to be very big before companies start contacting and saying, "Hey, you want this? You want to review that?" So yeah.
Yeah. We don't get nearly as many, but yeah, we do still get, a lot of, this year it was a lot of toy printers and stuff like that. But I mean, I imagine there's value potentially in bringing in and testing a whole bunch of printers and saying these are the ones to look for. But I'm guessing that value is like quickly diminished by now the fact that there are so many decent printer options out there that it doesn't take much, I'm sure, to find one that is going to be probably better than the vast majority of the ones that people are reaching out to you for. I can only assume.
Yeah. I've grown tired of reviews over the years. I do less and less. I just happen to be reviewing one at the moment, but I don't know how many I did last year, but I'm sure it was less than the year before and less than the year before and whatever else. It's just they take a long time to thoroughly test everything, to do it properly, to use it for enough hours. And um, another thing people seem to think that companies will doctor a printer to be perfect before they send it to you. But there's just been way too many shockers for me to believe that they're competent enough and aware enough to do that. So, for instance, this Creality K2, one of the Z lead screws is the wobbliest one I've ever seen. Like, it must displace about an inch from left to right as it's going around. It's just,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
think the configuration of it, like the way it's retained and it's got enough degree of freedom at the top that it doesn't appear to be translating to artifacts on Z walls from as far as I can tell so far. I haven't done anything really tall, but like surely if they were saying, okay, let's get a great review, let's set up one to give them a really smooth experience, there's no way they wouldn't have spotted that. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, if that's the first reality printer in a long time you've done, it definitely shows. So you didn't do any of the K1s or any of those other, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, again, the one that I saw recently, which from where I am, I mean, I obviously I work in 3D printers. We have a bunch of 3D printers, but it is really common, people just ask, what do you recommend? And I don't want to just recommend the stuff I have. So things like your video of just like which 3D printers do I actually use? Like
Hmm.
after, my experience, like those things are still helpful for me. So I
Mm,
listen to that stuff in the background and it definitely helps my recommendation. They're not reviews, but
yeah.
they're like, okay, this is one if I buy or I tell someone that they could get that they're likely not gonna be coming to me 6 months later wishing they
Mm.
hadn't.
Yeah, everyone's different, and a lot of people don't understand just because what's perfect for them and they love doesn't mean whoever's asking them what printer should I get. Some people just want to print. They want a tool, they want it to be efficient, they want it to not break down, they just want it to work. Other people want to build a Voron or a rat rig or a Secit. They want the whole project nuts and bolts and the satisfaction of knowing when it works that they squared the frame, they configured the firmware, and then there's people in between that want something that they want to tinker on and upgrade. So it always the answer to what printer should I get is always it depends. There's no one printer for everyone.
Uh, Curious, is that a second in the background?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
SK Tank over the shoulder.
Yeah. How do you like it?
Yeah, it's good. That and the Rat Rig I probably use the most for PLA, and then
Interesting.
um, I use X1 carbon, or if it's something big, the Magneto for filament that needs enclosing, and then P1P I just run PETG through it full time because the profile in Bamboo Studio and then Orca Slicer just printed
Don't like it.
beautifully from the start. Whereas the
Interesting.
last printer I used, it dedicated, it was always hard to get rid of that last little bit of stringing, but it
You
just
got it
worked
dialed
straight
then.
away. And yeah, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't need to
Oh,
change anything in the
cool.
profile on the P1P. I'm like, yep, done. That's my new printer for
That's
that.
it. Okay,
Mm.
cool. Um, so some people are asking things that I'm guessing are jokes because you're in Australia. So have you find any big spiders on your printers? And any crazy kangaroo encounters? I'm gonna
All right. I
have you
always love
actually
talking
though?
about Australian wildlife, because a lot of people I think are irrationally scared of things in this country. Like
Really?
you guys have bears that weigh like five, I don't know how heavy they are, but like they'll rip your face off, right? Or
Yeah.
mountain lions and things like that. Like it's easy to avoid a spider, a bit less so with snakes, but it's nothing's gonna break into my house looking for food and try and bite my face off in the night. I don't need to worry about stuff like that. Um, we are, yeah, where I live is 2 hours out of Sydney, so I'm up in the bush, and like I've only got a neighbour on one side. We've got bush and waterfall out the window here, and like in that direction, there's probably no houses for like kilometers and kilometers
Oh
and
wow.
kilometers. Like it's just bush. It goes all the way to Warragamba Dam, which is the water catchment for Sydney.
Hmm.
So yeah, plenty of wildlife. Kangaroos, it's more wallabies. They're like a smaller version of a kangaroo. So have those lyrebirds, lots of possums. And our possums are actually cute, not like your opossums you have over there. I personally think are quite ugly. And I think they're carnivores as well, opossums. Like I don't know, they kind of look like
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
Jekyll
yeah.
and Hyde version of our possums. Our possums are fluffy and cute. Koalas are very rare in Australia. They're endangered. So like to see one in the wild, like I've never seen one in my whole life, and I wouldn't expect to.
Oh wow.
Spiders, we've had, I think, 3 funnel webs now at this house. It's the deadliest spider in the world. If
Oh wow.
you get bitten by one and you don't seek treatment, you will die. But no one's died since 81, I think, in Australia.
Oh, okay.
So when I
Just
captured it,
anti-venom's readily available kind of thing.
well, that's the thing. So when I captured it, there's a place about 40 minutes away, the nearest drop-off point, but there's like a reptile park and zoo that does all of the milking of the spiders and snakes to make the anti-venom for the hospitals.
Oh,
So if you can catch one safely, it's like a good idea to drop it off so it goes into their system. And I guess that works since no one's died for over 40 years. Snakes is probably the one that scares me the most. A year and a half ago, both our dogs were killed by a snake on the property.
oh wow.
So that really sucked. During summer, if we're out walking the dogs in the bush or whatever, since then we try to stick to really wide paths where we can see a long way ahead. And we do come across them sometimes, but Yeah, that's the one that scares me because it's easy to, you could just step on them and then they turn around and they've got you. And we've got plenty of deadly snakes in Australia. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a scary one. But beyond that, there's nothing really scary in Australia. Or maybe sharks in the ocean, but that's not exclusive to here.
Yeah. If you're by the ocean, there's probably sharks somewhere.
Oh, I
Uh,
forgot to mention, sorry, for people not from Australia, the drop bears, they will absolutely get you. Got to watch out for those.
um, Jake England, who is one of the founders of Millennium Machines, if you're familiar with the Milo CNC, did do a shout out and said that Millennium probably wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't for you. So thank
It's
you.
always nice to get feedback like that. So, yep, appreciate the compliment.
Let's see.
And Max Zolan, who is the founder of Voron Design, gives you credit for doing your stealth burner SVO8 tool changer, rather. That's
That's
an
good.
insane
I'm
project.
very, very pleased to hear that because I wasn't unsure. Like, obviously, when you build a Voron, there's a lot of pride that goes into it. Like to go through the process to print everything to Voron spec and then to get your serial number. So I wasn't sure if like the dodgy SVO8 clone would be received well or not by them. So I'm actually super relieved to hear that. So thank you very much.
We had somebody ask, speaking of if you can step into your former teacher mindset, do you see 3D printers, CNC modeling becoming more of a core program or something that, students focus on? Similar to like how, yeah, I guess I don't know if they do that as much anymore, but like we used to have shop class or like auto class,
Mhm.
woodworking, things like that.
Yeah, it's definitely grown a lot. So in Australia, it's called TAS, Technical and Applied Studies. That's like the technology subject area. Has like woodwork, metalwork, engineering, electronics, agriculture, cooking, sewing, design and technology, automotive, all of that stuff fits under that banner. Um, a lot of it depends in each school who is on staff and what their familiar with and comfortable setting up. So I was always keen to push 3D printing into my curriculum because I was happy to run cheap 3D printers and tinker and fix them and set up all of that. But you might go to another school where the background of the staff in charge is completely different. So they don't have any 3D printers. But even so, as a trend, most schools that I have anything to do with have some sort of 3D printing or some even CNC. Probably laser cutters is probably the lowest barrier for
Yeah.
staff learning the skills and whatever. So I know at my last school, I always ran the 3D printers, but my boss was in charge of setting up a laser cutter and he like really embraced it. So
Hmm.
yeah. So and to further address part of your question, it hasn't replaced those traditional things. The subject area is broad enough that kids still love doing timber, woodwork, things like that, and they might like 3D printing as well or programming. Yeah, there's this kind of a niche for everyone, and yeah, it changes from school to school, but yeah, 3D printing and that type of manufacturing is becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
So my middle school, we had a shop until like seventh grade, and then they got rid of it because I don't know, safety concerns, something like that.
Hmm.
But my county fully transitioned over to teaching like Inventor, Fusion 360.
Mm.
Most schools got 3D printers, and that's where my first exposure to 3D printing was, like full
Hmm.
stop.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
so a lot of people taking classes for that now, at least in my
Yeah,
county.
I would say the same. I didn't mention the CAD side, but I used to, I think from year one. So what's that? 7-year-olds, 6 and 7-year-olds. We started with
Yeah.
Tinkercad.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh
we
wow. Okay.
we had an
That's
aim
awesome.
for by the time kids hit the last 2 years of high school. I know you guys have senior and middle school. For us, they're combined at 6 years of high school. So the last 2 years is when you're doing your electives that you might need to specialize in your career. So if you're doing, you're going to do engineering at university, then you're going to pick the subjects like physics and engineering, whatever else you need. So our aim was to get kids skilled up and comfortable. So by the time they hit those last couple of years, they were really competent and autonomous and could, they had an idea, they were skillful enough at CAD to design it and make it. So we were trying to bring it in from a young age. And again, I think in other schools that I've been to, CAD is getting more of a grip. It's seen as like an important skill for people to know, just like literacy and numeracy and whatever else, more and programming as well, actually. That's like seen as a skill for the future. So both those things have been growing more and more in popularity in curriculums.
Yep.
That's awesome. Well, Aaron, when I was in kindergarten, we had basically it was a sawhorse and some clamps, and we would take they literally just pieces of 2x4, and we had saws, and we were just sawing stuff. I kid you not, like little 6-year-olds doing that. None of us
Wow.
lost a finger, but yeah, that was safety has changed.
Yeah. The honestly, I'm looking back at my shop class. I'm like, why did they let me do that?
We did
But
have goggles. I have a picture, and I'm doing
oh,
it.
of
They had
course,
goggles
yeah,
and
yeah,
the kind of like an apron thing. So at least I guess we wouldn't cut our bodies, fingers though. I don't even know if they
yeah.
had gloves. We probably had gloves. I can't remember that part of it. But no, Michael, I think it's the same here. We've got a new school that's potentially my kid's gonna go to, and I was looking at the floor plan and it was like, oh cool, they actually have like a maker space. It's an elementary school.
Mhm.
To primary school. So it's I was like, sweet. I was like, I mean, we have 3D printers. I was like, reached out, and yeah, I mean, they said that it kind of depends with the staffing, like what they're gonna actually use that space for.
Mhm.
Which is seems a little disappointing because you're like, it seems unfair for children. That's kind of luck of the draw.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think it is very much the same here also.
Mhm.
Somebody did ask, so I know Max, if we're on design, compliment you on that, but somebody did ask sort of how is the tool changer going for the SVO8?
I think it's pretty close. So like most of the holdup has been from my end. As I said, like most of my videos I can make in a week, but using all of that week. So on an average week, there's not much time left over to keep longer term projects going. So the draft shift guys have been like patient and excellent with me. And yeah, they'll if I print something and fit it and say it's slightly off, they're like really good at modifying the CAD and sending it back. One embarrassing thing was I thought I was waiting on them for months and months for part of the actual coupling mechanism. And I've misunderstood, but the one on their GitHub is apparently good and ready to go. And they had designed the part to go on the SVO8 head.
Oh,
So one of the first things I will do is to actually print that and check that everything's working. And then I think the last holdup, possibly, I mean, it's in beta, so I can install it, but they've got a Clipper add-on that adds the support for all of the tool changer stuff. So once those two are in, then it should be ready to print as far as I can tell. There's a few little things I still want to do here and there to tidy it up. But yeah, it's coming along. I really wanted to get it done before the end of 2024, so I'm a bit disappointed that that didn't happen. So I'm trying to make it a priority to finish it all in the first quarter of this year. And I'll try and preemptively address another question I get a lot about that series. What's it going to look like when it's finished? Because the videos so far have been more of a build log, things out of order. I run into this problem, but my intention is to make a super cut video. It's probably going to be really long, where I cut into the best order to follow all of the bits from the video so far. And then whether it's GitHub or printables or wherever else, like text and images, step-by-step instructions for each step with BOM and all of that stuff. So I don't want people to have to go through the series and piece together and then realize, oh, hang on, I followed this from this video, but the next one he changed to something else because it was better. So I would like to make it as streamlined as possible for people to follow.
that makes sense. I certainly know there's a lot of interest. We sell spare parts for most of the printers that we carry. It's kind
Mhm.
of part of our philosophy. And we quickly, like a day after you posted the video 8 months ago or whatever, we ran out of all of our SVO8 tool heads. So yeah, there's a lot of interest, and I'm sure once you've got that, there will be even more. That's cool.
Hopefully, I mean, I can't see why it won't work well. Like the actual coupling mechanism has been proven on the tap changer. So I think to me that was always going to be the riskiest bit like the software side, the clipper add-on has been proven on the tap changer as well. I know the draft shift guys have some changes they've built on their forked version, but I think like it should work. So fingers crossed.
So projects like that, I mean, obviously you've got a Prusa XL in the background.
Mm.
Um, Assuming you get the SVOA going and the tool changer works well, is that something that you actually plan to use, or what happens to printers after you're done with projects like that?
Um, I mean, I've reviewed a lot of printers over the years. The vast majority get donated to schools or friends, things like that. I don't think I'll keep two tool changes. I'll probably, even if it works slightly better than the XL, because the XL was so expensive, like I can't justify giving it away. So I'll
Totally.
probably give away the SV08, even if it's just as good or better than the XL. But
Okay.
yeah, that will probably pain me because so much time has gone into it. But if
Someone will
someone
love it.
whoever receives it, yeah, loves it, then it's worth it for that reason too.
Yeah, totally. Somebody asked if you know of Jeff Lawrence, who's I guess a big motocross person in Australia, but is also a big F1 fan.
Zeph Lawrence, are they in motocross?
Yeah.
I don't really follow. I used to follow MotoGP a bit when Casey Stoner was riding, but I don't really follow bikes since. I love bikes, but yeah, I just always I had okay, silly story. I had a pocket bike, those tiny little pocket rocket bikes where you sit on it and your knees are up to the side like a clown. I had one of those maybe 10, 15 years ago, and I was not a very good rider. I crashed it and I got a nice big scar on my knee from a trip in hospital and them getting out the gravel and whatever else. So I love bikes, but I stay away from them because I know I'll probably end up in a coffin sooner rather than later. So I stick to cars for that reason.
Probably a good idea. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
on that. What are you into? When it's not 3D printing and stuff, what else do you like to do?
Sport always been a big thing for me, playing and watching. So most of the YouTube and whatever else I watch is to do with sport. So I follow the NBA pretty closely. I Rather than have a team, I normally pick one of the prominent Australians over there and then go for their team. So in the past, that was Paddy Mills, who's an Aussie legend. So I went for the Nets when he was there, and then it was a bonus when Kevin Durant and other big name people were there. But he looks like he's on the tail end of his career, so I've kind of switched to Josh Giddey, and I was going for OKC when he was there, and now the Bulls now that he's there. But Dyson Daniels is really um, ascending at the moment, so I'm keeping an eye on the Hawks as well. I play soccer or football, depending on
Yeah.
where you are in the world. So I follow our national A League. I'm a big Western Sydney Wanderers fan for many years now, and so is my son. So we try to go to a few games of that. I play touch football as well. I follow cricket. Most sports I would have played over the years. I just have always enjoyed sport. I used to be into athletics a lot about 10 years ago. So track and field, as a sprinter and a jumper when I was a bit younger. So yeah, I did that at a reasonable level for masters at least, is to travel around and do the championships for that. Yes, I love watching all types of sport, playing a lot of sport too. Motorsport, massive thing for me. So I'm absolute Formula One tragic. I watch every race and I watch a lot of YouTube and listen to a lot of podcasts on that. I've had 3 dogs now named after Australian drivers. So the
Oh,
latest
well.
being Oscar after Oscar Piastri. My heart's still broken from 2010 when Mark Webber was leading the championship and crashed in Korea in the
Mm.
wet. So, yep. And then I suppose I'm disappointed too that Daniel Ricciardo couldn't. Yeah, I suppose when he was at his best, Red Bull wasn't at its best, so it didn't quite line up for him.
Mm.
Maybe Oscar Piastri is the one who's going to bring the championship back for an Australian.
Somebody asked if you were ever an Andrew Bogut fan, I guess Australian basketball player.
Yeah, I know of him. Wasn't following the NBA very closely. I know he won a championship with Golden State when he was there, but as an Aussie, I definitely support him, but I couldn't
Mm.
say that I followed his career in a lot of detail.
What position do you play in soccer or football?
I ended up being a centre back this
Oh,
season,
okay.
so I'm playing over 35s, and I played when I was younger, growing up, and I was always a midfielder, but I ended up playing centre back, which I'd never done before. But yeah, I guess you try and do whatever the team needs, and yeah, embraced the role and yeah, tried to get better and better at it through the season. Our keeper had a lot of injuries too, so we were kind of rotating playing keeper between a few of us.
Oh
So I'd never
man,
played keeper before. Um, I grew to enjoy that a bit more over time. I don't mind playing keeper, but I miss not being on the main field as well. So I wish, like, if the game was 3 halves long, I'd happily play one of those 3 halves as keeper, so I still got a full game on the field.
cool. Yeah, it's my son's really big into soccer, and it's made me
Mhm.
more big into it. That seems like it'd be somewhat challenging. Just positioning and stuff like that for being keeper seems like it's kind of important.
Yeah, you got to play a lot further out than you think, is what I learnt. Otherwise, through balls and
Oh
breakaways,
yeah,
you just toast if they have enough time to get on the ball and then it's one-on-one with you. So if you can, you play like right out on the edge of the box. So if there's a long through ball, you can charge out of your box and just boot it
clear
clear
it or whatever.
before
Yeah.
it gets dangerous. Yeah, but you don't want to get caught out either. So hmm.
Uh, someone's asking who's your favorite F1 driver currently?
Oscar Piastri, definitely.
Okay.
I know we've got a
Since you
second
named your
Aussie.
dog after him.
Yeah, yeah. So it was Daniel Ricciardo before that, and then Mark Webber before that. If we take away the Australians, oh, I don't have any really firm favorites. Like I like most of the drivers. Um, Verstappen, I respect. I think he's like extremely good, but I think by the time he retires, he's going to have a pretty long list of like wheel-to-wheel battles where he crossed the line and went too far. Like just like Schumacher had a few things like that that kind of tarnishes his legacy. And like I respect Lewis Hamilton, he doesn't have too many of those. Like he's kept it pretty clean and clear of controversy on track. Um, like Charles Leclerc, if Oscar Piastri can't win this year, I'd probably be happy for Charles Leclerc to be world champion. Lando, I don't mind, but since he's Oscar Piastri's teammate, I don't want him to do that well. If I'd rather it be Oscar that wins any races that a McLaren can win. Um, yeah, I like most of the drivers. Like it'd be good to see Fernando Alonso get another win, as like he's a bit older than me. I think he's like early 40s, so yeah, that'd be pretty good. But I think maybe they missed their window. I think it was 2 seasons ago when they were competitive at the start of the year.
So you mentioned obviously as a hobby for sport, you're into F1.
Mhm.
Do you have any other involvement in racing?
Well, I've got my second channel, TT Racing. So almost 2 years ago, I bought myself a Formula race car, and I thought I would have driven it almost 2 years ago, but in a couple of days, I'm taking it finally for the first track day. So super excited over that. Just trying to write big packing lists and get every little detail right. I think because it's the first time the car's going on track, it would be so frustrating if I got there and some tiny little thing went wrong and I just had to go home.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to take as many tools and whatever else as I can. I've got manuals for the steering wheel and whatever else I'm trying to familiarize myself with and just make sure it goes as smooth as possible. Before that, like I've always been into cars and modifying cars. I've had different Japanese turbo sports cars over the years and modified them, and yeah, been in clubs for that. I've got a go-kart as well, an electric go-kart. It was actually a final year high school design project for a student, and I bought it off him at the end. And in the corner of the room, I've got a much more powerful electric motor and the batteries to build a big custom battery pack. So that's another long-term project I just haven't got to for years and years. So hopefully in future I can finally get that done.
No, that's awesome. Is anything of the car 3D printed?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've just been printing a few
Really?
parts for the race car in the last couple of days. Yeah. So 3D printing is, for people who design their own parts to print to solve problems around the house, it's so satisfying to do that. So on cars, it's absolutely the same thing. So I just did a custom foam seat, but every time you get in, the side two straps for the harnesses fall in and then you got to pull them out from underneath you. So I just printed these little TPU bits with magnets embedded on the inside so I can put the buckles and magnetically hold them out of the way while I get in and out of the car. Um, I've got a connector, Anderson connector I wired in parallel to charge the battery without pulling apart the battery and like it's buried under all this stuff. So I just printed another little bit that goes around the chassis tube and then holds and stops the water or anything from getting in and shorting that plug. I've CNC machined like a camera mount in the past. I've got other bits that hold lines for the fire suppression system. Yeah, there's lots of little bits here
Interesting.
and there that are 3D printed on the car.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Mm.
Somebody asked if you're gonna make it to any one of the, and maybe you have been. Have you been to any of the US Rep Rap festivals?
I haven't, no. I don't know if I ever will, simply because like it would be such an impact on my family to leave them behind and just to go to a show and things like that. So like I appreciate the other creators that do put in all that effort, but it's a long way away and it would be like a really big deal and expensive and
Yeah,
all of that. I'm probably happy to leave it to the other channels that cover those things.
totally. It's like Colorado's really nice. You family might love it.
I reckon I would love it if I was there. I'm
Yeah,
sure I would. I'm not against the concept.
yeah,
It's
I
just I
guess.
just see it as a really big haul from Australia to do something
Oh
like that.
yeah. Well, there's nothing direct. I'm assuming you have to, at best, can you fly into like LA direct?
I have no
Sydney, LA
idea.
or something? I mean,
No
yeah,
idea.
I imagine it's a very difficult or stressful flight.
Hmm.
Sydney should have directs to LA and Houston via Qantas, as far
Yeah,
as I
Interesting.
that
know.
sounds likely.
Interesting. But still, yeah, I totally.
Yeah.
You would spend as much time on the plane as you would at the show.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a 16-hour flight. Yeah. I couldn't be in a flying tube for that long.
Mm.
So as far as your so most of the like I'm a big WRC fan
Hmm.
and like sim racing a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's
Um
another one of my hobbies actually.
Oh, cool.
okay, so that kind of answers my question. I was
Yep.
wondering if you were just like kind of going straight in on your race car or if you I know you had I believe it was a Sil 80 before.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool.
I did some
So
drift and skid pan days with that and
yeah,
drag
yeah.
racing too.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure if you were I thought you were going like straight in. I was just wondering like what experience you had before going in with that
Hmm.
I believe it was a Formula 3. It's been a long time. I'm trying to remember.
It's a Formula 1000, so it's called that
Okay.
because they're meant to have a 1000cc motorbike engine. My
Yeah.
one's actually got a Hayabusa engine, so
I,
it's slightly bigger capacity. So technically, it's not a Formula 1000, but the car was ordered as a Formula 1000 kit, and the person who built it just put in a bigger motor. Yeah, so I've got a pretty good sim rig. I'll do a few people have been asking on the TT Racing channel show off my sim rig, so I'll do a video probably in the next couple of months going through all of that. But yeah, it's a pretty good sim. A lot of stuff's probably out of date now, actually. Like there's a lot more choice for direct drive wheels and things like that compared to when I got mine. I've got one of the first generation Sim Magic. I think it's an M10, my direct drive wheel. So it's like big and heavy compared to what there is now. But it was the cheapest direct drive wheel available at the time. Um, I've got I've got six haptic speakers through the seat that opened up the seat and like machined out the foam. So it's got all the effects for curbs and road noise and whatever. It's actually a motion seat as well. Again, it was like the
no,
cheapest one I could get
Hmm.
at the time. So like if you were doing a rally and stuff, it's
you'd
I
feel
think
every
it's
single
3 degrees
bump.
of freedom. So like if the rear end goes, the whole rig, so the monitors, I've got
Oh,
a ultra wide, so that's mounted on the
interesting.
rig, so that moves, everything moves together. I don't turn that on. I've done like leagues competitively and things like that. I was in like some Aussie leagues where we were racing every Sunday night. I wouldn't turn it on for that. It's more of a fun thing than like it definitely doesn't make you faster. But yeah, if someone was to come around, fire up like dirt rally, turn on the motion sim, and like it's so much fun
Can
for
you
that.
get motion sickness doing that?
Some people do. I've got an early VR headset, and some people just can't handle that at all, even without the motion on.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
yeah, some people you can either hack it or you can't. Like it's just I don't know.
Probably like
But
racing
for
too.
me, never had a problem, luckily.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. It sounds super fun. And then I
Mm.
see things like the rig that Aaron you'd set up, and I'm like, yeah, my wife won't let me do that. It looks super cool though.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking if if someone else is looking to be a content creator and
Mhm.
start a channel, I'm sure you get this question all the time, but like, do you have any pieces of advice for people like that?
I would say like try and avoid the pressure of the algorithm and trying to force it too much. That's like the main thing I would say. So at the start, like I had a vision. This is how I want my channel to be. This is how I want my videos to be. And I'm like happy that I've always stuck to that. So one of that is not having sponsors. Um, yeah, like the really annoying thumbnails. I know I've got some silly ones where my face, that cliche, but I try not to have too many of those. Um, and also like honesty too. Like I said earlier, it won't be long if their channel is growing before they start being offered free things. And maybe someone early on is tempted to give a good review so they keep on getting more free things. But if you're hinging your whole channel on that type of thing, like it won't be very long until you're caught out. You give a great review for something and then when customers get it in their hands, they're like, this thing's rubbish. What's this guy talking about? And like your credibility shot for forever. Maybe if you're lucky, a long time, but most likely forever as soon as you compromise like that. So I would say like don't copy any other channels. Do what you want to do. Have your own style. Some channels are funny, some channels aren't. You know, some mainly do projects, some mainly do reviews, some mainly do guides, whatever else. You pick whatever vision you want for your channel, try and stick to it, and then be consistent with honesty and yeah, try and be accountable to yourself, if that makes sense. You say like a lot of people get into like politicians or become a police officer because they want to do good and change the world, and even a teacher as well, but they kind of get corrupted over time, especially a politician doing what they need to gain factional favor to climb the ladder and all of that stuff. Like I guess on YouTube there would be the same temptation that people get corrupted because, but I honestly don't think you need to in YouTube because if you're making videos of interest, the audience will find you over time, and it's absolutely not a competition either. Because like I doubt there's anyone out there that only watches one 3D printing YouTube channel, right? You're just going to watch things as they come up, so
Mhm.
you don't need to put any other channels down to lift yourself up. So just yeah, stay true to yourself, come up with a vision, stay true to yourself, be honest, and just trust that if you're doing the best you can, the channel will grow and you can have success without having to get desperate and compromise in any way.
Yeah. I know, that's been a hard thing and years ago, I was in positions where I was doing the probably very common search of like best 3D printer of 2000 something. I don't know what, but like, you get those lists, the top 10, or like you get, or and then you start digging into it and you're like, okay, it's looking at create quality into three or something like that. Um, and if I remember right, it's just a lot of times also in like the SLA community, it's the same thing. But like, um, it's really hard. And I actually like remember trying to find the reviews that were more critical because it just seems like so many of them are like you really question whether or not they're they're doing it because they've got some sort of commitment to,
Mm.
say this is great or
Hmm.
whatever. Um, I definitely I would say as a person that consumes content, be that one that's critical. I mean, even if there's even if the machine is great, there's no machine's perfect.
Yep,
You look at the X1
absolutely.
behind you is a great machine, but I can tell you five things that I don't like about it.
Hmm.
And
Mm.
let people decide from that, I'm guessing is what you're saying. I mean, that's
Yep.
yeah.
I mean, you said it yourself when you were looking for those type of videos, you were instantly suspicious. So you know, don't create the suspicion. Like, be fair, be honest. Like you said, every product's going to have good and bad things. So put that in the video. Don't feel pressured to keep any companies happy, or that's it. Like you compromised.
Yeah.
One thing that made like well makes your channel stand out and made it stand out for me is the transparency that you have with your review policy.
Hmm.
Like it's a very, very like there was one time I read the whole thing and I was like, oh my God, okay. But it's very cut and dry. Like this is what if you are gonna have like if you're gonna send a product to me, you have to agree these terms.
Mm.
And it's not like I'm gonna say backrooms affair, just
Yeah, yeah,
lack of a better term, but like your viewers know exactly like what this supplier agreed to. And I've there's even been times, I think there was one um where a supplier tried to circumvent the agreement and you just instead of continuing on, you're just like, okay, we're done. Um just I really respect that integrity.
yeah. I mean, I made that public after it was already written. It started as a thing for my protection as much as anything. Like I was worried about me saying, this printer's rubbish, and them saying, "Oh, you've ruined our business." And unfortunately, that type of thing can happen.
Yeah.
I had one laser that I reviewed that was just nowhere near what was advertised, and the guy, he was in Russia, he wanted to sue me and made a big deal out of it. And it was actually Naomi Wu that stepped in and said, "Look, you're clearly shady. You're going to back off, or I'm going to start making content about you and how shady you are." And he completely backed down after that. So yeah, I had an early version that's mostly how it is now. And then every now and again, you might deal with a dodgy company, and you're like, okay, I need to add a sentence here to cover this thing I hadn't thought of. But yeah, it just makes it easy for everyone. You kind of keep the manufacturers at arm's length, like you don't feel obligated. You're telling them upfront, if there's something wrong, I'm not going to hide it. If something goes wrong with this, it's going to be in the video. There's no awkward conversations where they're trying to say, "Oh, no, we fixed that since your version came out, so you don't need to mention that." Like they know they've agreed beforehand it's going to be in the video. So yeah, it makes things uncomplicated. It makes it good for the company, good for me, good for the viewer. So yeah, I'm glad I implemented that.
Can't review based off of a manufacturer promises, only what you have in your hands.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, like just because a printer was good or bad for me, maybe I got a lemon, maybe I got a better one, and other people get the lemon. So I would hope before spending as much money as the 3D printer costs that people wouldn't watch just one review from one channel for that. Like if I'm buying something expensive, I'm going to watch several reviews and try and get an overall impression. So hopefully people are wise enough to do that with 3D printers as well.
Uh,
Absolutely.
y- you mentioned, and you have maybe no knowledge on it, but I remember like a year or two ago, the Naomi Wu like just disappeared because I think there's some
Mhm.
issues with Chinese authorities or something.
Yeah.
Is there an update on that you're aware of? I forgot about that whole thing.
I did a video on a heat insert press thing. Was it last
Hmm.
year? I don't think it was too long ago. I was in contact with her back and forth a bit around then.
Okay.
But my understanding is basically if she keeps her head down, they'll leave her alone. So
Just
she's
can't
not
make
really
content
doing any
basically.
more content. Yep. So she's got her shop and whatever else. And yeah, I really reflected on that interaction because, obviously she's a female, I'm a male. She's in China, I'm in Australia, but in a lot of ways, with us from the same mold of people, right? We're
Yeah.
creators, we like to make videos, we like to do projects and things, but just how easy my set of cards is compared to hers, like where I live and my upbringing and everything, like it's so uncomplicated for me to follow those same hobbies and things like that. I just respected her a lot
Yeah.
upon reflection for that. I was like, man, some people have got to put up with so much crap compared to myself. So yeah, I'll count my lucky stars.
Well, and I mean, depending, I don't know like how serious it is, but like, literally risk life and limb kind of deal,
Yeah, that's it.
versus I'm sure where you are, people would be up in arms if, if the government was doing that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Something else. Um, let's see. Somebody asked, as a new content creator, how would you recommend someone who is working with a sponsor that wants more control over their content? Just walk away?
That's a hard one, isn't it? I would say a contract would probably be really important because I'd say a lot of companies will try to like a bit of the thin end of the wedge at the start, and then over time they're trying to just creep and get more and more control. So I guess um, from the start, like coming up with the channel, what are you happy with? What's your point that like I won't cross this? What's my no-go zone? And then get that in writing somehow so the company can't exceed whatever that boundary is. Because I can't say, don't let them do this or that because it's different for everyone. Maybe some people are happy to have, like I've got a sign on the wall for my filament sponsor, and I have a thing in the description, but that was all that was ever agreed. Like it would have annoyed me to have to spend 30 seconds every video to talk about their filament, even though it's great filament. Like, but that I never would have liked to have done that. So I guess upfront, just establishing this, you'll get this, I will get that. Just make it really clear for both sides, and then you can always fall back on that. And yeah, if they're not doing their end of the bargain, then you can walk away. Or if I suppose if they're giving you really bad vibes from the start, maybe that's a bad sign.
Yeah. Curious, on your back wall, is there something that's like covered? Is that like what's the black thing back there?
That's the TT RGB light. So the
Okay,
batteries
okay,
wouldn't
so
last long
that's
enough for this, but I turn it on when I'm filming. Yeah.
okay, cool. Cool. And then yeah, I guess the follow-up was just to, how do you do that without burning bridges? But I think you kind of mentioned, I think
I
that
mean,
would,
I think ultimately you have to be unafraid to burn bridges. If you're gonna have integrity and gonna be able to do this long term, you have to be willing to do that. Because
okay.
like I said, if it comes out and you're in a scandal where people find out that what you were saying in your video wasn't actually what you thought, it was compromised in some way, you'd toast anyway. So
Yeah.
better off taking a smaller hit from not working with a company than working with them in a way you're unhappy with it coming out, and then your channel's completely done. So yep, be willing to burn bridges. Come up with whatever your boundary is you're comfortable with and stick to it. If it means ending a relationship with whatever company, so be it.
Yeah.
You'll sleep better at night.
I mean, it sounds it's a lot of just setting expectations, so they
Mm,
know, yeah, it may be positive, it may not be, and maybe in between.
mm.
Yeah, and I would think if you can set those expectations where you're fair and that they don't want to deal with you, then I mean that's probably the red flag. Like
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
don't
If they
do
don't want to deal with
it.
you, then it was going to be a nightmare, most likely, if you had like, oh, maybe it's all right, and then gone ahead.
Yeah. Um, One question that we tend to ask, that kind of came to mind, and obviously I think you've got a different perspective than some of the other people we've talked to. Is there anything exciting that's happening in the maker space? So it could be 3D printing, CNC laser, anything like that, that you're excited to see, that you think is going to come in the next year or two?
I am glad that that phase of clone race to the bottom, let's make another Ender 3 with a filament runout sensor and advertising it as if it's some new innovative thing. That phase seems to have ended. I think it's probably Bamboo Labs were the main one.
Mhm.
I mean, Prusa was always there aiming for that, more expensive, giving customer support and whatever else. But I think more and more companies are trying to make just works printers. I think that's really good. People who want to tinker, they could build a Voron, can't they? Like there's plenty of options still there for them. You can still modify and customize as much as you want if you don't want a turnkey printer. So I'm really pleased with that. Um, I would, yeah, stuff like non-planar 3D printing, like that was one of the earlier really popular videos I had, and I'm still frustrated that it hasn't really taken off because I love it. Clearly, other people love it, but manufacturers haven't really built in any support for it or seem to be pushing that way. Um, so maybe not just non-planar, but just those multi-axis 3D printers. I reckon someone will come up at some stage with something that can do non-planar and things like that and just catch everyone else by surprise. Hopefully. But maybe I would have
Yeah.
said that a year ago. But yeah, hopefully it actually happens at some stage. They always seem to be community driven,
Mhm.
those type of things. But whereas in the CNC world, like industry standard is way more than 3 axis for
Yeah.
any type of serious milling. So I guess the right type of company has to think, you know what, we can bring this approach over, and yeah, fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
And I think you mentioned, I mean, that's where some of the firmware and slicer kind of things will have to also progress.
Yep.
Um, that's something I guess I'm curious about. So I mean, you mentioned that slicers have evolved. I think particularly in the last few years, it seems like the number of features, just seems like it continues to increase, whether it's changing, seams, we've got Arachne now, and just all these other like kind of features that are becoming just standard on all the slicers. But it's always been one of those things that is a little bit of a head scratcher because it seems like whether you're Cura or your Prusa slicer, Orca slicer now, I mean, there's not a paid model for them, right? So they're kind of living off of the goodwill of people and donations and
Mm,
their own interest. And so you get things like, Super Slicer, which, was doing really great, was making a lot of advancements, and then seemed like, person probably got burnt out, took a
Mm.
bit of a break, and then maybe it's, picked it back up when they weren't so burnt out. Is that a risk that you see?
Yeah, we have a really interesting community and history coming from rep rap. So like I found a lot of the time, okay, so for example, when I did my calibration website, the one where the G code's pre-done and then you put in the size of your printer and whatever else, and it will substitute in and it downloads a G code file for different tests and things. Like I thought at the time, should I put this behind a paywall? And I decided not to. But in the first year or two of that channel, so many people were generous enough to just donate and say thank you anyway. So I was happy to help more people ultimately. But if I look at it purely from a financial point of view, I probably would have made as much money from people donating as I would have from putting it behind a paywall and then hardly anyone using it.
Mhm.
So it's a really, I can't imagine there's too many other hobbies where so many people are willing to collaborate and be generous and develop things for everyone else to benefit. And, a lot of the new printers are becoming more proprietary and turnkey and a bit more appliance-like. So it's hard to know whether those two sides of the scene will continue in parallel or whether the maker and open source side will slowly get squeezed out over time and end up being a really niche part of the community. So I don't have an answer, but I do think about that and I wonder about that. Hopefully there's at least enough. I mean, I guess with Super Slicer, so the update stopped for that, but then Orca Slicer popped up. So
Mhm.
there's hopefully enough people to spread the burden and to keep things moving in one aspect or another. And I suppose because all of them, most of the slices beyond Cura derived from Slick 3R, the old slicer.
Yep.
Like it's easy to port or easier to port things between them. So I think that helps as well. So, when if one falls behind, new people might come in and be able to port features from the other slices and the kind of a strength in numbers approach there. They can
Mhm.
support each other whether they intend to or not.
Cool. Yeah, no, it definitely seems like it's something in this industry, this community. And I think it really is the community. It's not the businesses like ours, that is just really unique. And that
Mm,
whole thing of, the buy me a coffee, how that's like actually a thing where
mhm,
somebody like, someone that's doing a firmware or whatever is able to, subsist off of not charging people things.
mm.
Um, that's amazing. Yeah, I think it just is really cool. Somebody asked a more fun question. So you announced your break a couple
Mhm.
weeks ago, I guess. Um, did you have like plans for the rest of your time off? Anything you're gonna do that's fun?
Okay. So as I mentioned, my race car's going to the track in 2 days. So the last week, half a week or so has been all about getting the final things for that. Going on a family trip for a few days at the end of January. I've done like half weeks away in the past, but it's
Mhm.
always been trying to prepare a video before I went away. So this will be the first time in years where I can just concentrate on the trip and relax. Um, just relaxing, hey? Like another hobby of mine is gaming. So um
What
mainly
games?
hand I've got a Switch and I've got it like a handheld PC as well. So things I can play in short bursts and pause and whatever else. Then I got the Sim Rig as well. So I've just been setting up a whole bunch of emulators on the handheld PC at the moment. I've got a few actually. I've got a hacked PS Vita. I've got a what do they call it? A PS Pi, which is a original PSP with a Raspberry Pi inside to
Hmm.
run to emulate things like that. So I've been playing Gran Turismo
Oh, nice.
4 Spec 2, which is probably another good community. So they managed to modify the old PS2 game and add new features and whatever else. So I've been playing that again. It's just fun setting up as many emulators as possible, actually, even if I don't get around to playing the games. So I've never
Cool.
owned an Xbox. I was always a PlayStation guy. So now I've set up Halo. So, okay, I know this is a really popular series. So I'll play three. Is there more than three? I don't know. But I've got Halo 1, 2, and 3 downloaded. And at some stage, I'm going to play it and yeah, see what all the fuss is about. So yeah, stuff like that. Just playing sport, going on day trips with the kids, sitting on my butt on the couch playing games. getting to projects of mine, things like that.
Cool. Now when you say you take a break, I mean, break from posting, are you doing any work like
Um,
that's
I've
planning?
been designing and printing stuff for the race car, but
Okay.
that's like, even though this is my job, it's also my hobby. So sometimes on
Yeah.
the weekend I might design and make something, but I want to, that's not work, because if I didn't have a YouTube channel, I'd still be doing these type of projects
Yeah.
regardless. I suppose the only thing close to work I've been doing is I've been printing a few things. I set up and have a few things printing on that Creality K2 that I'm reviewing, just so it doesn't feel like too big a task when February hits. So at least I'll hit the ground running with that.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, you've got the two channels, and obviously teaching tech is sort of the bigger of the two. That's
Mhm.
right. I'm guessing that's what you're the most known for.
Yep.
How do you balance the content in
Mhm.
either?
With teaching tech's my job. When I started the second channel, the idea was it was always going to be like an after hours passion thing. So
Mm.
I was never aiming for any particular schedule with the videos. It was just going to be as stuff came up, as I was doing track days, as I was doing projects on the car. So I did TT racing video half a week ago. And even though I'm on holidays and I'm not meant to be making videos, because it was that channel, in my mind, I see it as, it's the hobby thing anyway. So I didn't mind doing some editing for that.
Does do you spend less time doing than like prep and editing and stuff like that for those
The
race
workflow is
videos?
pretty similar, but on
Okay.
the second channel, there's certain things that I left out from the start, just that add up in terms of time. So I don't, just even little things like I don't have background music. I don't bother doing cards most of the time after I upload to YouTube. Just yeah, little things where I'm like, I'm just gonna relax up. Who cares? Like nobody's really gonna notice at the end of the day. So yeah, there's little bits here and there that I don't bother doing for that channel.
Okay, interesting. Somebody asked if you have a favorite 3D printer you own.
Mm. I set them up. It's a luxury having so many. I set them up to do different specific things. So, like I was mentioning earlier, some are for PLA, some are for flexibles, some are for this, some are for that. Um, let's say I was going to a desert island and I had to pick
Yeah.
one to take, assuming there was electricity there and a filament tree or something like that. What would I take? Depends what I'm printing. It's hard.
You
It's hard.
got to pick one.
Mostly print PLA. But that's because a lot of stuff I print are like boring brackets or stuff other people wouldn't have any interest in. So, I don't know if I can pick one. The Second gets a lot of use. The XL I need to use a lot more to justify the price. I still have some buyers regret over how much that cost
Yeah,
and
it's
how
not
little
cheap.
I've used it since. Um, the Bamboo Lab printers, I'd still recommend an A1 Mini as the best beginner 3D printer because it just works and it's fast and
Yeah.
the slices there with all the profiles and whatever else. The Rat Rig needs some upgrading because it's, like I said, the operating system's based off the original one and it's a bit out of date. I don't know, maybe the Second,
I mean,
And
I'm
now,
guessing
fast. Um,
it's also I'm assuming it's really fixable. So I mean, I'm thinking if you're on a
yeah,
desert island, you got to be able to get something that will last
yes.
forever.
I actually had a horrible mishap with the tank in December. And that video I was talking about on the firmware and what each of them needs, one of the things I was going to talk about was how Clipper can break when you update it, and it broke. Um, the update finished, and then it said there's no Clipper screen was giving a message something along the lines of there's no network manager installed. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like the update just happened. So how is that component now missing? So I thought maybe it was the Wi-Fi, and I'd move it over to the center in line with the one Ethernet port in this room, and I
Mhm.
actually dropped it. It landed upside down, and the filament spool holder is still
I
broken
s-
off the top. I
yeah,
haven't
I see
fixed
you've
that
got
yet.
filament just sitting in the middle of the printer right now. It looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it seems to survive with only that breaking and the PEI sheet on the bed because the bed's a kinematic bed. It went flying off, and the very like 5 mils on the edge got scraped, but it
Oh,
seems to have
but it's just
survived
on the very,
otherwise.
very edge. I'm assuming it's unless you're printing.
Yeah, it won't matter at all. So I guess it lived up to the name of being a tank, fortunately.
I'm gonna have to
I
look
still have
more
to
into
fix the
this.
firmware. The firmware is still broken on that, but it survived falling off. I mean, this would be like maybe 1.10 meter high, this back bench, so
Mhm.
it was pretty decent. It was loud enough that my wife ran down. I was like, "What happened? What was that big bang?" So,
Are you alive?
oh, I was like, my heart sunk. I'm like, I can't believe
Oh, that'd be
I
yeah.
just dropped the printer upside down.
Is that the 400?
It's 350
Three.
the bet on that.
Okay. Cool. I'm looking.
I
That's
didn't
cool.
actually get a photo of it sitting upside down, so I probably should have.
Sweet. I'm looking more at this. This is cool. It's a cool looking printer too.
Hmm. It's different. Everything's based off like V-slot extrusion, most printers, or maybe like injection molded parts, but it's like, yeah, press bent stainless steel frame and yeah,
Yeah.
looks different. Certainly heavy, that's for
It,
sure.
it looks like a tank. Do you know about how heavy it is?
It would be in the video from when I built it.
Oh, okay.
The first video
I'll,
I would have mentioned it.
I'll
It's
check it
quite
out.
often I have to go back and revisit my own videos because I've forgotten stuff. I had to do that the other day with the race car because I know I had mentioned the torque spec for the wheel nuts. I couldn't remember. So okay, find that video. Oh, yep, there it is. Then talked up the nuts.
Yeah, I had to do that recently. I had done a video on setting up tachometer fans for the hot end,
Hmm.
and I was installing one on one of my printers, and I was like, wait, there was something I needed to do in the configuration, and I just couldn't find it. And then I was like, I did a video on that.
It's very helpful
Yeah.
because you no doubt would have made the video and explained it in a way that made sense to you. So like what better person to have it explained by than your previous self?
I asked early on, and you do have some. We usually do some giveaways, and we have not done anything yet. And we're getting close to the time that I'm told that is a great time for how long these things last. Um, can we just make sure you said you have a couple trivia questions?
Sure. Yeah, it's going to be
Sweet.
motorsport themed. So
Cool. Okay, so I was mentioning that I was gonna come up with a list of things that we can give away, and I did not. So let's do it for 2 kilograms of filament. Whoever gets this first question.
all right. So going to be around Australian motorsport, but not things specific to Australia. Any Formula One buffs, you'll be okay with this. Okay. Who was the only driver in history to win the world championship in a car that they designed themselves?
And I think I'm on, oh, see, I'm on top chat. That's bad. Okay, I'm on live chat now. So I got Bruce McLaren, Mario Andretti, Jack Brabham.
Should I chime in when you read out the correct one?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that Jack Brabham, that's the one.
Okay, okay. Morton Jonas Chat won that. So Morton, I think we've sent you filament before, but you get some more filament. Congratulations. And just for that, we don't have it, whatever type you want, man. We're not gonna be picky. I am sorry I did the live chat, or I did the top chat, so I'll scroll through and make sure I didn't miss any questions. But
Um,
did you
he
see any, Alan?
Morton was or any questions?
Oh yeah, no, Morton won that one.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Oh yeah, Morton, the matte ABS. So yeah, that's that's our new line. We have a new matte ABS, using a different resin that is definitely fantastic. It is very similar to some filament that we really liked that we just stopped carrying because of some quality issues. So if you guys print ABS, give it a shot. It's really nice. We will get more colors out, but I think right now we've got 4. Mostly because
So
we're still a small company, and when we bring in filament and we're paying to have it made, this is brand new. We hadn't used this resin before. We do what we can to start with and see how it goes from there.
and because we forgot, I'm just gonna do my little spiel. If you win something, either contact us via info@west3d.com or open a ticket on our Discord or contact, like just contact us and let us know what question you won and we'll get you sorted.
Yes. And we should probably we'll post somewhere our Discord server information. I think next time it will be easy just to say, throw that in there. Does anyone from our crew have questions? Because we can do, I guess, Michael, how many questions did you prepare?
I can come up with them all day on the spot. So
Oh gosh, okay. The no pressure for let's see. I'm gonna let me see if I can come up with one. I want to do something to flame Aaron because Aaron's not going to be West 3D very long. But I got to think of it. Okay, so
Have we
let's
made that
do.
announcement yet?
I think so. So by the, I think we mentioned. No, we mentioned it before the chat. So
This
Aaron,
isn't public yet.
who's on the bottom right, is actually going to be sort of leaving West 3D as our one of our first departures. He is going to be working over at Luke's laboratory, which is going to be a really great experience for him. He's moving halfway across country, a third of the way across country. But he'll be able to do a lot of really cool stuff. And he's in love with a lot of Luke's lab things. Tube is one of them, and he'll be able to be really close to a lot of tubes. So I'm happy for him, but this will be the last probably Meet the Maker that you see him on sort of live stream. I will still bug him so he gets in chat. But okay, so now it's announced, and I'll announce it in our server if I haven't done that already.
Yeah. Sorry to bring that up right now, but so trivia, right? Okay. Trying to think. I had one in my head. I'm gonna see if it comes back to me. Does anybody else have one?
Yeah, Michael has one. Let's
I
Okay.
can
let's
go
go
all
for
day.
that.
You just tell
Let
me
me
whenever you're ready.
Yeah, let me see if there's something else. I want to give away. So we made an announcement. Gosh, it's been maybe 2 weeks now, a week and a half. We now have 3D sets kits. So if you're familiar with the little RC car projects, we've got those. I would like to give one of those away as something for someone that wins. And if for some reason you don't like you don't want to do an RC car project, you're not into that. We've also got dart blasters that you can choose, or you could choose a heat set press. So
I think
something you
those
can use.
print it yourself, get the mechanical hardware kit projects. I hope that's something that expands a lot more in future. I love those projects. You get to print, build it yourself, put it together. But if you're getting all the hardware and electronics in one kit, like I love those. Like great. I hope you sell a lot of them because I want to see that type of thing expand.
I do too. I can tell you before I started this company, that was like I had multiple printers, and I hated seeing them sit there. Like if they had been off and not being printing for more than a few days, I was just wanting to find something to do. And I don't have a lot of other hobbies. So it was one of those things where, yeah, I built RC cars. I built a couple RC cars. And I just think that that's a gap. There's not a lot of bamboo, actually. If you guys,
Mm,
you don't have to have a bamboo printer, but they do have like a small set of like small projects.
yep.
Check
Like
it
that
out, but there's really
mouse is
not a
one of
lot
them.
out there. Oh yeah, yeah, like the
I did
mouse.
the V-twin engine recently that I'm going to put in a future video.
Oh,
Yeah, they're good.
oh, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, those kinds of things I think are awesome. Obviously RC car is going to be a little bit more involved, but yeah, I think it's a gap and it's kind of more of a personal thing for me. I just really think it's something that I would have enjoyed. So I also hope it does well. But yeah, let's give one of those away.
All right. Question. In 1988, McLaren with the MP44 won every race of the season except one. What country, what race was it that's another team won, and what was that team?
We got Italian Grand Prix.
That's correct.
Okay, Adam Storm. So
Does he know
again,
what
reach
team?
out. Oh, what team? Do you know what team? A Ferrari's Gerhard Berger.
Yeah, it was Ferrari, and it was poetic because Enzo Ferrari had died like the race before, and then Ferrari won their home race
Oh,
somehow
interesting.
in a season where McLaren destroyed everyone. So good knowledge, well done.
Interesting. Well, I've got two. So let's do two winners here. So Adam Storm, you got Italian Grand Prix, and then Nick, you got the sort of full answer, but let's do both of those. So if you could reach out to info at West 3D. Actually, you know what? Let me see if I did this right. I just changed the website last night because funny enough, so we're all hobbyists, by the way. So we are really into the 3D printers, web design, and keeping a store running like an updated. That's like secondary thoughts. Um, so like we had it was Elegoo actually. We were buying some more printers, and they're like, you know what? We like there's no like you go to printers and you've got all these like Creality, Voron, Prusa, all those things. There's no Elegoo. So I was like, oh yeah, that's probably would help. So I did that, but at the same time, I put a menu option for projects. So if you would like, take a look at that and see again, VLMP, any of the Dart blasters. We'll do Hedamame too, which are these headphones. Um, we've got, yeah, let's say that or any of the 3D sets. Go ahead and pick something. If you want to do, looks like we have ERCF. If you would like, we could also, take $75 off of a box turtle or the Death Racer kit. So pick something, and we'll make sure you get it. Email info at West3D, or just go to our server, create a ticket, and we'll get you taken care of. Aaron, did you think of one?
I did.
Is it racing related? Maybe
Oh
I
yeah. Oh yeah.
is it okay? So it's a
We're
theme.
leaning. We're
It's a
leaning
thing
into
we've
this.
got.
We're
If
leaning
you're
into
not into
this.
racing, I'm not into racing. My family races actually, does drag stuff, but no idea. So get quick with the Googles,
Okay.
and this will be for another two things that can filament. Let's do that.
Okay. Just making sure I get this right. Okay. In 1985, who won the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb? They were also a famous WRC driver.
What is WRC, by the way?
World Rally Championship.
Is that the sim racing?
That's mainly
like,
what I do, yeah.
cool.
Um
One said me, which would be really crazy if it was you.
is Michelle in the chat? I'm gonna say
So we got, Albe said Michelle K. Monton.
Michelle Maton.
Oh,
Yeah.
We'll go with that. I think he misspelled it, but Albe,
Yeah.
I think you were the first there.
Yeah.
Cool. Congratulations. Awesome. So I feel like I've talked a lot and asked a lot of questions. I think I covered a lot of things that were on the chat. If I missed anything, feel free, throw it in chat. Alan, Aaron, if you have any questions, I'm gonna just stop talking for a second. But we can go with that. And then I think once we're done, I was trying to keep this under 2 hours, and I think we might be able to just barely squeak by.
Well, to take it kind of back to the creation aspect, I don't think I've ever heard you talk about kind of your workflow as far as, your videos. So,
Hmm?
any information there, what what your setup looks like, or
Mhm.
what kind of software you're using would be kind of interesting for me at least, and I think a couple other
Yep.
people.
Okay. My software is nothing like I don't really have any fancy editing or anything like that in my videos. So my video editing software is, I think Magic's own it now. it used to be Sony Vegas. So that's what I
Okay.
use. I looked into other ones in the past and like they were just different enough that I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered to put in the time to learn something. So I'm switching just for the sake of it. So I've stuck with that the whole time. Like I don't have any fancy transitions. I don't have anything fancy at all in my video, so that makes it um, easy. So my editing computer, one of the big things about moving to this house compared to my last one, it's actually behind a door in the next room. So previously it was always in one room, so I could never print anything and make a video at the same time where I was recording my voice at least, because that would be too noisy in the background. So that's been like huge help here. Um, the process for a video, so it starts with just like half a sentence on that list I spoke about. So I don't know, example, like it could be review video for the Creality K2 combo. And then I guess for a review, I'm following my review policy. But for most videos, one of the first things I'll do is write out the chapters that will be timestamped on YouTube. And that helps me in my mind structure. Okay, I want to cover this, then this, then this, then this. And sometimes those update as I'm making the video, but generally the bones of it are there the whole time. For most videos, I suppose some things I might need to order hardware or parts or whatever else. And a next phase in a project video or a test video would be checking through documentation and maybe printing components if it's needed for wherever else. But that whole segment of the video is what I would call like the technical side, actually reading through instructions, making stuff, installing stuff, wiring, getting it working. So basically understanding that process. And then I might update the chapters if there was some non-obvious thing that might trip people up. So I think, okay, I need to cover this because that's going to be the most useful thing. And then by the time I filmed all of that, I get to the last thing I'll be doing most of the time is editing. I leave that for the Thursday and Friday, and in Australian time at least, the video comes out Saturday morning. I schedule it overnight. And then yeah, so editing, putting all that footage in, I'll have 95% of the footage I would have filmed through, earlier in the making of that video, but there might be specific things that come up or I need to go back, turn on the camera, get a specific clip, add that to the edit as I'm going, and then I only worry about the thumbnail as it's uploading to YouTube or exporting from the editor. And I think I'd be a lot better YouTuber if I was thinking about the thumbnail and title as the first thing in the video. Like that's what gets people to click and watch. I'm like average at that at best. So yeah, that's almost an afterthought, that side of it. So I'm doing that right at the end as it's uploading, and then it really, like by the time I'm publishing a video, I'm over it for the week. That'll be like Friday afternoon. I would have been editing all day, like, oh, I gotta make the thumbnail. Sometimes I haven't thought of what I want it to be, and then uploading it and going through and putting in the cards and all those little nitty-gritty things. I'm over it by then. So I've got to force myself to stick with it and be diligent and cross off all the things I normally do.
Yeah,
Is
Cool.
that
it's
specific or too specific? I'm not
No, it's
sure.
perfect.
no, no, and I can definitely relate because, you get to that point where you've done the export, you know, for
Mhm,
me, pretty much the last thing is, doing my audio loudness normalization, doing the
mhm.
final export, and you're like, it's done. And then it's like, okay, now I have to do the artwork and then do the
Yeah, yeah.
artwork for the social media sites, which has to be, in a square format, and then
Mhm.
coming up with your description and everything else. It's like, oh, well, here's even more time
Yeah, it
spent.
really drags on at the end. Another
Yeah.
thing, actually, if I ever have a video where I've designed something and I'm releasing it on printables, that takes way more time than someone who's never uploaded would think to that to get it right. So I got to, it might be iterating as you're designing and you've got all these different versions of it. So I'll re-export each part one at a time again to make sure it's the most up to date. Then I put it into the slicer, make sure it's rotated the right way, then export it again, and then they all go in a folder, then that needs to be uploaded, and then I need to take images and do a second thumbnail for printables, which, like you say, is a different aspect ratio. And then there might be like a bill of materials and step-by-step instructions. That really can drag on as well. I try to not leave that until the end. I try to do that as I'm going throughout the week just to lower the burden. But yeah, it's easy to just chuck one file on a file sharing site, but it takes a lot of time to do it in a way that's easy for people to follow and make sense.
Someone was asking, you know, what kind of NAS you have and if you have to have a bunch of storage and what sort of the network looks like over there in the bush.
Um, okay, so when I first started the channel, internet in Australia has been historically terrible until recent years. So I was on the equivalent of, I mean, I'm old enough to have used dial-up when I was younger. It was broadband, but way slower than I had now. Basically, when I finished a video on a Friday, it would take overnight to upload. That's how slow it was. And I'd have to get up early in the morning, hope that my internet connection hadn't dropped out, and then do the final publishing on YouTube like a little bit before the video came out. And
Wow.
then maybe halfway through the life of the channel where I was living got connected to the NBN, National Broadband Network. And now I can upload a video in 5-10 minutes. And that was amazing. That made such a big difference for me to be able to just upload it. Yep, everything's done, schedule for overnight, finished. It was so much less stressful. In terms of storage, I've only got one, I think it's a 2 TB hard drive that I've got everything for the channel on. Um, and I've got a second archival one once videos are however many years old. I'll delete pretty much all of the source clips, just leave the final exported version and any graphics and specific things. And I just do that to save room. And it's actually getting full again, my main one. So it's one on my to-do list to like delete some old files and whatever else. But I'm not someone who keeps everything that I've ever shot. I try to clean up and yeah, want to get around to it for that. So no NAS or anything, just um, hard drive plugged in. I think it's an SSD, hopefully, otherwise it would be too slow.
Do you back up your content? The
Some stuff is backed
$2 kilograms?
up.
Okay.
So I've got like a resources folder with all the channel logos and graphics and all of that stuff. All of that's backed up. I guess once something's published, I can always re-download it from YouTube. So I
Yeah,
would see
sure.
that as having been backed up for me. Um, if there's something really critical, I will back up specific for that video. And then when the video's done, I'm not so concerned. But
Yeah.
generally, no, I guess I'm living on the edge by not backing up stuff that much. But I figure once the video's done, the video's done, and
Yeah.
you know, doesn't matter too much. Quite often, as I'm editing, I'll be talking about something specific, and rather than film that happening again, you know, it might be a reference to manual bed leveling with a piece of paper. So I've got an old clip of that, so I just got to find the folder, drag it in. It's much faster than starting a print on a specific printer and refilming it. So yeah,
Yeah.
anything like that, I'll try not to delete if I know I'm going to use it a lot.
Cool. You know, as you have grown your channel, no, I don't. It sounds like you're sort of in the middle of nowhere. So maybe this is less common of a thing, but have you, you know, just in your like day to day, like run into people that recognize you?
Maybe like 5 people ever. Very,
Okay,
very rare.
really?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
probably, yeah, maybe 5 or 6. And half of those would be like students who had
Okay.
seen a video I did on F1 in schools competition or something like that. So it's last season playing soccer at the end when we were shaking hands with the other team and guys like, hey, you're the guy from YouTube. That's very, very rare.
Oh,
Like
that's
every
okay.
couple of years I'll have something like that. Very rare.
Interesting. Interesting. I see.
It's a
I would
good novelty.
imagine. And I mean, I guess it's still a niche kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's it. I
you
wouldn't
know,
want to like imagine, I can't imagine being mainstream famous and having to deal with paparazzi and all of that stuff.
yeah.
So I did a video, I was in a Mighty Car Mods video, and they were talking about um, people just not respecting boundaries at all. Like they're a lot bigger channel than me, and I think
Mhm.
cars is a lot less niche than 3D printing. So they like to the general public, they have a much better chance of being known. I was saying people would just show up at their house on the weekend. Hey, I want to help you work on your car, and just, or like they'll be out with their family
Wow.
eating somewhere, and people come up and get in their face, and yeah, just no respecting of boundaries at all. So I'm glad I don't have to deal with anything like that. No one, I just walk down the street, nobody knows who I am, and that's the way I like it. It's good.
Yeah, totally. Man, I didn't know what I would do if someone like showed up to my house and just wanted to hang out. Oh, yeah. And I can imagine like that would be challenging. It's
I
you're in a
mean,
good spot.
the thing is, they probably mean well, right?
Yeah.
They're passionate fans and they just want to be part of it, but they haven't considered it from the other point of view that can't just rock up to people's house and inject yourself into these situations.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you remade your video calling out of printer manufacturers,
Mhm.
remade your video. Oh, okay. I read that wrong because I'm like, I don't know what I'm reading. Okay, so if you remade your video where you're calling out printer manufacturers with features and users want, what would
Mhm.
you include for 2025?
Okay. Interestingly, when Bamboo Lab first contacted me, they referenced that video. They said they'd been in development for a year at least. And all the people in the comments saying, we'd paid more, we just want something that works, and we want more alternatives to Prusa and
Hmm,
whatever. They were
yeah,
like, we're on the right track. So that
yeah.
that was exciting. Um, what do people actually want? So I think efficient, multicolor and multi-material, definitely something people want. Like I think Bamboo Lab AMS has made it a lot more mainstream, but
Hmm.
like it's the major flaw is how long it takes to purge the filament and then all the little curly bits that are wasted. Um, I think yeah, non-planar like fourth axis things like that, just avoiding support, things like that. Um, there's room for a step there. I had one before, I've just forgotten it. Oh, yep. I've noticed comments in the past. Something people want is a way to recycle waste
Oh
prints.
yeah,
That's like I built a shredder from precious plastics and I've like invested a bit in that, but it was expensive and it's niche. It's more for maker spaces and schools. Not many individuals are going to do that at home. So a lot of people have said, Bamboo Labs, since their printers have the AMS and make all the waste little bits, they should sell something that makes it easy to turn that back into filament. So I reckon a lot of people will be happy if filament and recycling wasn't as
yeah,
expensive and hard to do. And same with the PHA filament video. There's a lot more people I was expecting saying, like I would happily switch to a filament that was really good for the environment as long as it's, comparable price or even a tiny bit above. So I
yeah.
think the eco side, people will be happy to be able to recycle and use friendlier filaments as long as it wasn't too hard for them. So some sort of off-the-shelf product that did everything without costing an arm and a leg.
Yeah. Um, we will do one more trivia once we're for sure we're done with all the questions because I actually think I have at my house one more roll of the PHA filament that like is now unobtainium and we've got emails people asking for it and all that. And obviously I'm not gonna do it for the one that's sitting at my house, but I will gladly give it away for another trivia question at the end here. Um, we've got a couple more questions here that just people have asked, and they're probably fairly quick ones. Um, one is, how do you figure out new tech so fast? And do you, I
Yeah.
guess?
I'm not, I wouldn't say that's really an accurate description. I suppose figuring out, okay, a lot of things are documented well. A lot of the early Ender 3 videos I made on different mods and stuff, they weren't documented that well. So, that's the need for my video. But a lot of the time when I cover things these days, the documentation's actually pretty good. So unless something goes wrong, it's just a matter of following the steps. And then I'm trying to synthesize that experience so people get an impression and maybe I'm pointing out things that aren't so clear. So I'd say it's not that hard to do that. Like if I'm designing something myself, then I guess that takes time to iterate in CAD and whatever else. But like I'm not the guy making the 4 and 5 axis 3D printers. That's not me. The closest things I've had to like that was modifying my Delta to have a belt ejection system on the bottom, and that took a while to develop and whatever else. But generally, I'm the messenger rather than the creator of a lot of these things. So I would say I probably don't quite fit the description of what that person was
Do
asking. I'm not,
would
yeah.
you say then that you're reasonably good then at digesting information though to be able to re-explain it?
Yeah, I guess so. I think probably looking at the broader scope of the question, I'm pretty efficient at most things I do. Like I'm good at maximizing my time. I was as a teacher as well. Remember at the start of every year, we were meant to like do a first aid online course. And It was like the day before it was due, and it was our first day back, and we're in the staff room, and some of my colleagues had been chipping away at it for days, and I like knocked it out like before the first lunch break. I was like burning through it, like writing reports, things like that. Like I've always been quick at things like that. Like
Okay.
if you've taught the kid, you know the kid, you know what they're good at, you know the improvement things they need to hear. It's just you're not inventing something, you're just writing what you already know. So yeah, I've been I do also try to put in place things that speed up my workflow where I can. So, for instance, the credits at the end for of my patrons from Patreon. So I wrote a script a couple of years ago that takes this horrible CSV that Patreon exports and formats it into the format my video editor needs. So it says copy, paste for each column, done. I used to have to manually go through the notifications on Patreon and say, okay, that person has left, delete them off the list, fix the order, or that person has come, put them in the right order. I'm like, this is ridiculous. It was taking like half an hour per video. So a couple of hours doing that script, and then it's a 2-minute job for years and years now. So I look for chances to do things like that.
Cool. Somebody was asking if you had the ability to make your own filament. If there's this particular color that you just wish there was available, or a specific material.
Um, I guess the unicorn filament is something that will be good for the environment, but also stand up to like high temperatures and things like that. So if there was something like an ASA or a nylon that was also biodegradable, and I guess easy to print as well. Like I rarely print nylon because it just warps, and I'll dry it and it warps, and
Yeah.
I'm over it. So I'd stay away from it most of the time. Color, I've never thought about that. Most of the things I print are in black because they look subtle, and yeah, I mainly print brackets and things. I'm not printing pretty things very often. So the parts for the car are in black TPU or ASA because I don't want them to stand out. I don't want people to say, "Oh, that looks 3D printed." I just want it to blend in. So color, no, but yeah, Holy Grail of filament for me would be biodegradable, could stand up to temperatures, and easy to print. And I guess one thing that would be good is that foaming PLA. I don't know if you guys have
Yeah.
sold that before. So it would be a good novelty and maybe really handy application wise to have filaments where by changing whatever setting, you can change the properties of the final material.
Yeah.
So if you wanted something to be more flexible, maybe you change the cooling or the temperature or whatever else. But that doesn't compromise layer adhesion, which those two things would, oh, I'm asking too much here.
Yeah.
But if you had a magic wand, something like that would be great.
Cool. No, I mean, I would say there have been developments like, yeah, the foaming filament. I mean, even the one that they're using for the basketballs and stuff. Like, I mean, there's like little minor developments that are happening all the time. I think PHA is also one of those that it's got some really interesting features. It's definitely not the unicorn filament. It does the environmental side, I think, really well. And yeah, if you're gonna print something that's gonna sit there as a display piece, it's probably works well for that. But it's I don't think I'm trying to think because we do have our own filament sort of company that we do, we can make new materials and stuff, and I'm not thinking of anything that I've heard of that is coming out that is gonna hit all those boxes.
Yeah, it's pretty much a unrealistic wish list, those
Yeah,
features, rather than something attainable.
but it is a thing. I mean, there's a lot of plastics waste for sure, and especially in what we're doing. I mean, we're literally our hobby is making plastic,
Yeah.
and it's a unfortunate reality. And if there's things that we can do to reduce that, um, it's great because I think 3D printing, all in all, does great things, and it can actually be a lot less wasteful to make
Yeah, that's
something
it.
at your house. Um,
You got to
than
look
to,
at the whole process.
yeah,
You can't just say, "Oh, you're wasting that much plastic," because if you print 20 of something and you buy that in a shop, then that's 20 sets of packaging. That's like the transport. There's like, yeah,
yeah,
there's so much more to it. It's like growing your own food at home. Like you save a lot, even though it's in small volume on other things that impact.
totally. Yeah, I think. Yeah, but I mean, it is still a real issue. Um, so my last question that I have, because you mentioned, and you've got the AMS behind you, you've got the Prusa XL, but you mentioned that most of the things you print are black. So I'm assuming you're not always using that feature. Um, One of the things that I've sort of come to understand in the retail space, there was, and from some of our suppliers, there was a lot of concern when Bamboo came out. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening? Are your sales tanking?" And we were not focused on Bamboo. We now sell quite a few things that work for Bamboo, but that was a huge concern, at least in our neck of things. Again, we're heavy in the Voron space, DIY. We sell parts for all the 3D printers, that kind of thing. What I believe, and I'm curious if it's your thought and where you fit there. Um, there are differences in users, and it's changing the makeup. If you were in a 3D printing, you had to be someone that was still mechanically inclined a few years ago, because you would be having to do maintenance and really fiddle with your printer to get it to work and be reliable for 3D printing. I think that's changed, where Bamboo is fantastic. We just got the GD Plus 4, which I think is a fantastic printer. Same thing. We took it out of the box, press print, didn't have to do any Z level. Like, there was nothing. You just press print and it goes and it works. It prints great. So that's certainly changed. But we still see a group of people that are interested in the machines as well. That is maybe different. You got the Bamboo AMS. There's people that want to print toys, and they're going to really just gravitate towards that. Where do you think your either your viewers or where your content lands in that spectrum?
Yeah, good question. I try to cater. Okay, put it this way. I try not to pigeonhole what I do to only one group or another. And I've done 2 videos over the years where I've actually set up a survey and asked people this exact question. So just give me one tick and I'll bring up the spreadsheet.
Totally.
And I can tell you, oh, that's right. My mouse is not.
I think I remember this survey, at least one from last year.
Yeah, I did one last year. Like, I want to make sure I'm not barking up the wrong tree if I'm only doing just print stuff when a lot of people want to do hobby stuff as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, one moment.
But we've seen, I mean, we've seen this this year too. I don't know if it's with Christmas or whatever, but like, we had a bunch of people come in that's like, I just got my first 3D printer. Like, that was a present of the year kind of thing. And I do think, while that's not our main thing, things like the Bamboo A1s, I mean, they were super popular. A1 Mini, a lot of people came in saying they got one of those. It's bringing in a whole group of people that I just think wouldn't have touched it. Too expensive, too much effort. They feel like it's too difficult, whatever. I'm curious to
A
see
lot
what
of
your
people have
results
been
say.
burned in the past, that's for sure.
Yeah.
By those type of things. Like, they take as honest the claims on the manufacturer websites. Like, there's a lot of those cheap clone 3D printers make it sound like it's so easy to do, and then they got burned and probably
totally.
turn their back on the hobby, and you can understand why.
Is your
All
survey
right.
on the 2 terabyte drive?
No, it's all, I have a lot of stuff on Google Drive because I've got a few computers I switch between. Okay, I have it up. So the question was, I had a specific question on hobby versus like just works versus I want it as a project. So let me scroll and find that. Personally, I cover that spectrum. I have some printers I don't play with, other ones I love doing as projects. So I'd say my videos are always going to be a mix, just because that reflects what I'm doing myself. So it's pretty standard curve here. There's like a few on each end that I'll pay for something, I don't want to play with it, versus I want a complete project. So I had one budget versus like just works, and each of them people are spread. So a lot of people are both ways like me, I would say. So hopefully that means I've got my finger on the pulse for my audience at least.
Totally.
So for instance, okay, so for you guys as a Voron seller, there was a question, how interested are you in do-it-yourself kits where you build the entire printer as a project? and 4 out of 5 was the peak for that. So that was
Oh,
biased more
interesting.
to the like I want to build those
Interesting.
type of
Yeah.
kits versus the just works one was also biased the same. So I'd say it's pretty even
Pretty
split for
split.
my
Yeah.
audience. And
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
similar myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean we've seen it, and it's hard. I don't know if it's probably the same with you. I mean, you have people that are self-selecting into your channel because they're into, you know, learning about some cool things that you've done with your printer, or, you know,
Mm,
learning also about which ones just work, because you have both those videos.
mhm.
You know, I'm guessing we're in a similar position where if we ask, there's a lot of people that are builders that are into it.
Yeah.
But it's good to know. I mean, I think that's what we've seen. We're still seeing growth in the space, which is good. And again, I think 3D printing this year is going to take off as much as it did last year,
Mm.
just with everybody that got stuff for the holidays. So,
Yeah, it's exciting. Like I always loved playing with Lego as a kid, Lego
mhm.
Technic and building like I'm going to build a car suspension system and like making it actually work and move and all of that. I see 3D printing as not just for adults, but an adult version of that where you've got an idea, I want this, and you can actually make it. Like it's
Yeah,
incredibly exciting and empowering for those reasons. So if more Just Works printers means more and more people can experience that joy, then that's a great
totally.
thing as far as I'm concerned. But at the same time, I don't want that rep origin and building everything from kits and tinkering and collaborating to go away either. I want that open source heart to always be there. So
Yeah,
hopefully there's at least a
I
good
think they'll
size
live
of the
together.
community. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's
Comparing it to
amazing.
cars, like, the vast majority of people buy a car to go from A to B and not many tinker with them, but there's still enough industry and market for people who want to go racing or modify and all of that. So hopefully we can always have that balance at worst in this makerspace.
Totally. Hopefully. Okay. We passed the 2 hours, but now I just said we'd give away the last thing of PHA filament that I likely have in my garage. Uh, if I don't, I will make it up to you and we will find something else, but I'm almost positive I have a spool of black. It may or may not be in the little cardboard box. Because one cool thing about PHA is it's hydrophobic. So they literally ship it without any plastic. Like it doesn't get wet. Um, it is cool. You probably will spend the first 100 grams or so just figuring out how to print it. I don't remember what your experience was. It is a little bit different. They have recommended settings that worked fairly well, but you'll
Yeah.
you'll tweak it and then wish you had more and then can't find it. But
Yeah,
you'll be
that's
able to
it.
say you have one of the last ones.
Yep.
So if you
I've
have
got
another
a
trivia.
non-car question if you
Okay,
want
cool.
a
Yeah,
non-car one.
totally.
Okay, so a few times I have shown on my channel my miniature goats. They are named Brett and Jermaine. What show, New Zealand-based show, but set in USA, what show are those names from?
Hmm.
Hopefully that's not too obscure.
Flight of the Concords. Oh, is it really?
That's it. Yep, Flight of the
Is it?
Conchords.
That is an
Ding
amazing
ding,
show,
winner.
by the way.
Yeah, it's
That
great,
is such
isn't
a good
it?
show.
We saw them live about 5 years ago and it
Oh,
exceeded
really?
our expectations. Yeah, it was so funny. And Arch Barker did the warm-up too. It was like everyone except Reece Darby. It was fantastic.
That is awesome. Yeah, if you guys haven't, if at least if you're in the States, I don't know how you watch it anywhere else, but HBO has Flight of the Concords and it is fantastic. I don't think they don't do it anymore, right? It's a
No, no.
yeah, but 15 years ago or so, more
Yeah.
than that even, they did, and it was fantastic. Um, yes, apparently there's a lot of Flight of the Concord fans on here, so that's awesome.
Yeah. It's like
Um,
a cult classic show, that one.
I'm gonna call it just because again I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. Michael, this was fantastic. Thank you for spending the time with us. I learned a lot about teaching tech, and I learned a lot about you as a content creator and a maker. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, glad to have the invitation and be on. I always enjoy talking to other like-minded people, especially since I've been doing this full time and I can go um, in terms of work, like months at a time without speaking to anyone else face to face. Like I see friends and I play sport and I see people in that way face to face, but yeah, I really enjoy that collaborative aspect and discussing these type of things when I get the chance. So yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, sorry, I have to pick a winner apparently. I'm so ready. Albe, you won again? Okay. I'm Albe, I'm taking an executive decision. Petty Ruxpin got that one because it was within seconds. And you
Mark
said,
deferred.
oh, you deferred. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Petty Ruxpin, you got that. Which I think I've said before. I had Teddy Ruxpin growing up, which was a toy bear that talks. It's kind of creepy. They even did a relaunch of that like 10, 15 years ago. But yeah, my mom actually sold Teddy Ruxpin tapes. That was like her side gig. So anyway, Petty Ruxpin, that's awesome. Congratulations. And then finally, yes, again, thank you for the time. This was awesome. I don't think we've actually had a conversation with somebody that has such a following as you. So also, I'm a little humbled. Thank you for again taking the time out of your day, out of your morning, because I think you started at like 9 to do this with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, the subscriber count is just a number. I'm still an enthusiast working by myself making videos. I'm still a one-man team. Like maybe it's unrealistic, but I still see myself as one of the viewers. I'm just a guy like I used to be before I started on YouTube, part of the community, designing, printing other people's stuff, and yeah, collaborating. So yeah, no problem at all.
Oh, cool. I mean, I think you come off that way, and just from reading the chats, there was a lot of comments that weren't questions that came through, that were just really appreciative of the work that you do because you got them into 3D printing or you helped them get through, some things. They learned a lot from you, and I can say that's been the same for me too. You're definitely one of those people that I grew up on 3D printing a little bit. I mean, I want to say 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I was watching a lot of your content. I think you go that far back. So yeah, again, thank you. It's been incredible.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a good one, guys.